across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. If you've got any good aircon, you can come share our way. We'd be very, very grateful for it, this tiny little box. It's not particularly cool. I think Jeremy's made it hot this morning, but we have a lot to talk about and I want to hear from you. Oh, come on, you're not getting any work done. You may as well call in, have a nice listen. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say you're probably out in the garden. No one's out in their garden. It's still already way too hot in large parts of the country. But we are going to be talking about, you know, the heatwave hysteria, because of course there's heatwave hysteria. It's Britain. It's what we do. And we're going to talk about plenty more besides. But there's no question at all. I mean, for me, the most incredible story today, we covered it on the show yesterday. It broke before midday, which is this Nottingham University NHS Trust and just extraordinary maternity scandal there. I want to hear your thoughts on that. It's the latest damning report. It's the biggest, the worst maternity scandal exposing deadly failings in the NHS. Yet again, took years and years to get it. And yet again, we're told, lessons will be learned, action will be taken. I don't believe it. I doubt you believe it, but any organisation that says, oh, well, we know about a load of babies dying and a load of women dying, but not sure we can, you know, frankly, be bothered to do anything about it. It looks a bit too much like hard work, but let's hire another net zero officer and send everyone else on a training course about how to talk to trans people and why they're racist. I mean, I'm sorry, that's the organisation we've got in the NHS, the one that we are paying for. I want to know who you blame. Do you blame the staff? Because at the end of the day, you know, if staff aren't doing their job, fundamentally they've got to be responsible. I don't care how bad your boss is. If you're not doing your job and keeping a mother and baby safe during labour, then I'm sorry, you know, you have to look yourself in the mirror. But is it the bosses? You know, not enough staff, not enough support? Is it the NHS structure itself? This constant urge to protect the name of the local hospital, to protect the reputation of the NHS that seems to come again and again and again above the need to, I don't know, save lives. You know, that thing we thought the whole point of the NHS was. I want to hear from you because I do think the deification that's gone on about the NHS and NHS staff for so many years is part of the problem. I want to know your thoughts. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged the national rate and text cost £1 standard network rate message. We're also going to be discussing Donald Trump, talking about Andy Burnham. Apparently he's extremely liberal. That, by the way, very much an insult in Republican terms, and also whether or not we are going to get Ed Miliband as his Chancellor, but also, as I say, the heatwave and homeowners being forced to tear out air conditioning from their private properties because the local council doesn't approve. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. As I say, the number to call 0344 499 1000. Delighted to say that joining me today is Philip Ingram, MBE, a former senior military intelligence officer, and unlike our guest in the studio yesterday, frankly, a picture of sartorial elegance. Very good morning, Chiz. Good morning to you, ma'am. I would never expect anything less. If I could, in fact, I wouldn't describe them to you. The shock and the horror of Benedict's shirt, Benedict's bedshirt, and my lovely colleague Peter Caldwell's shorts that luckily the audience couldn't see. I mean, yeah, well, shocking.
Yeah, to put my jacket on, I had to take my fleece and pullover off so that the jacket would you could see the tie. Yeah, people are saying it's warm.
Some people cope better than others.
This is yes, gentle heat.
Gentle heat. Oh, I hate people like you. But anyway, I think we're all coping. Look, let's face it, we know that's what a lot of us are talking about a lot of the time. But look, let's. I mean, there's a lot of politics around, but a lot of it is a bit. Let's face it.
Hot air.
Yeah, quite literally. This is why he's in. We know there's horrific events going on in Venezuela, by the way. We're hearing updates of that in the news. But here, you know, let's focus on what is going back at home. Hundreds of babies and mothers died or were left seriously injured by what senior midwife Donna Ockenden, in her report into this scandal at Nottingham University Hospital NHS Trust, called a toxic trust. Women were ignored, mistakes were covered up, senior bosses knew that there was a problem. She found a culture of bullying where speaking up was dangerous. Bosses' responses were shaped by self-protection rather than patient safety. When families did complain, they were met with, she says, an intimidating male-dominated panel who were dismissive of non-medical voices, didn't listen to the mums. I mean, again, often, you know, you're in labour, it's happening in your body. You may have an inkling whether something is going wrong. Over a period of 13 years, they looked at 2,500 cases. The review took 4 years. They found 520 cases of mothers and babies who suffered potentially avoidable harm, some of this life-changing, you know, damage to the babies and to the mother's health, or deaths as a result of poor care. Of that, we're talking about 6 mums dying, 62 newborns dying, and 94 stillbirths. Now, if that all happened, you know, in an accident, we'd be talking about that for weeks. That happened in a fire in, I don't know, West London. Goodness me, we'd be talking about that for years, wouldn't we? But I know what's going to happen. We're going to talk about this report. There might be some Sunday paper investigations as well. And then it'll just go completely back to normal. And pretty much none of the recommendations that are made in this report are going to do anything. Nothing's going to change. And then we just wait a few more years for the next big maternity scandal, because it's not the first, it definitely won't be the last. Numerous scandals over numerous different hospitals, over in lots of different areas. And we'll just wait for the next one. Is this a problem, you know, with the staff? No, there are going to be mistakes. Humans make mistakes. It's a very difficult job. A lot of these things are judgment calls. But when the unit has a problem that is clearly being flashed up in the statistics they're getting, someone should have acted and no one acted. This is a problem in the management. Is this a problem in the structure of the NHS itself, and this monolithic structure and this desperate need by everybody involved, protect the NHS's reputation at all costs? Sod the dying babies, sod the dying mums.
Do you know the sad thing about this? I knew about this in 2011, 2012, when I was asked to give some advice to a fantastic consultant obstetrician who was working into a charity that was providing obstetric training out into Africa and other third world countries. And one of the things they'd been asked to do was look at providing that training to NHS trusts around the UK, because it was recognised that there were appalling outcomes in many places. And one of the things they did was carry out a survey, and the survey showed the shocking condition then. So 2011, 2012 of what was visible. And they tried...
And what did they see that they went, there's a problem here?
Everything. It was across the board. It was a lack of training. It was a lack of basics in many cases. And
basic best practice.
Basic best practice. And then a lack of understanding and resources being provided by the management to ensure that that could be brought in. And when it was shown to one or two of the different NHS trusts how they could improve outcomes, they all went, oh, this is brilliant. And it was a charity that was coming in. But then the management said, oh, no, but we aren't paying for it. We can't afford it. We want you to provide it for free. And I turned around, and this is where my advice came in, turned around and said, why don't you as the charity speak to the insurance companies that are insuring the trusts and see...
We were paying out tens and hundreds of millions of pounds.
How much money they would save on their insurance premiums if they did this training and linked the two together. And all of a sudden, the NHS trust managers suddenly went, oh, there's money that we can save on this. Oh, right, now we're interested.
They're more concerned about saving money than saving babies.
Correct.
Here's the thing, I mean, that's terrifying, but terrifyingly not surprising. But the thing I've never understood is that, you know, if it's your job, you know, these people, they sacrifice their lives to work in the public sector. No, sorry. These are people who are doing a job they really enjoy. And I'm certainly not pretending, you know, midwives are fantastically well paid, but I imagine it's an incredibly rewarding job. I was very lucky. I had fantastic midwives when I was in labour for all 74 hours. They were going off, coming back on, going off duty. You still here? Yeah, still hasn't come. But, you know, I know a lot of people have had very bad experiences. I at least had the advice. I was a political editor of a national newspaper. I was able to talk to the health secretary. I got advice from another health secretary who happened to pass by the same conversation. We're moving house, going to move from this hospital to that hospital. And the health secretary at the time said, oh, God, don't. Stay at the one you're at. It's much better. You've got a much better chance of coming out alive. I don't think health secretaries should ever have that conversation. I think you should. That should be same chances anywhere. But I'd interviewed as a news reporter so many families, so many grieving parents who'd lost their babies. Utterly, I mean, it's the most heartbreaking interviews you could possibly do. It's the worst thing you could possibly do is to lose a child. And I remember just saying to my husband, when we're in there, if I'm unconscious or anything, I need you to be the person shouting the loudest. No Mr. Nice Guy rubbish when we're in hospital. I need you to be shouting for me. Literally grabbing anaesthetist by his neck and bring him in. You've got to keep us both alive, because I was so aware of the risks. But it is genuinely terrifying. And I suppose maternity scandals, they sort of catch our hearts much more than any other kind of scandal, because it's baby mums and babies, and because it's something that so many of us will go through. But the Mail headline today, they're saying the arrogance of the men who wouldn't listen in Britain's worst maternity scandal, ignoring women's women's mornings, but mums morning, but also, a lot of the people working those units, particularly the nurses and the midwives, are women. But there has also been a lot of scandals over the years over midwife-led units where the focus is on, well, we don't, natural birth is best, so we're not going to give a cesarean, even though a cesarean would have saved the baby's life. There's a reason why we medically intervene in birth, because it's really, really dangerous.
Yeah. It is, and to be fair to the clinicians, and again, I got this in talking to the consultant, who was absolutely amazing. She was bouncing between different operating theatres, doing the most complex of deliveries and all the rest of it, and keeping mothers and babies alive. But at the same time, she was running a department and trying to then do all of the management stuff that needed to happen around the department, balance that with the clinical stuff, balance that with all the pressures that the staffs are having to do at lower levels, whenever the managers who are sitting there planning their LGBTQ and their away days and all the rest of it are not responding in the sort of time. There wasn't the time and there wasn't the support to do it. And this is where the mismatch happens across the board.
What are they spending their time? What are you spending your time doing other than keeping babies alive? I would have thought that was one of your top priorities. But
if the priority isn't providing clinical excellence, then the manager should be sacked.
As the stats are very, very clear on the NHS, it's a great organisation, lots of great people working in it, and it does a lot of great work. But the one thing it's really bad at is keeping people alive. People go, I get so angry when I hear people saying, oh, I'm so grateful, I had this terrible accident, or I had cancer, and I'm so grateful to the NHS for giving me life. So that's, sorry, with all due respect, that's their job. I don't walk past every single lamppost in my street when it's on at night thinking, well, that's useful, I've got lampposts, and then call the council the next day and say, I'm so grateful to you for providing the service you're literally paid to do out of my taxes. Well, you shouldn't be grateful. You can be grateful for the kindness and expertise of individual people. And certainly, I suffered a load of miscarriages. My first miscarriage, the care, just the kindness. And of course, we were at cards, and said to Gibbs saying, just thank you. It really did help. It really did help. Now, that you're not paid to do that. You do that out of the goodness of your heart because you're a good person, and we're grateful for that. And you should say, I say thank you when I get off a bus. It's just frankly polite, isn't it? It's just
professional standards.
But I do think we've got to stop this thing where we're so grateful. And I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for the NHS. Literally, you go around every other first world country, people are just dying in the street because they haven't got health care.
I lived in Germany for 13 years. A large number of my soldiers, their wives, their children, all the rest of it, had to go off and be treated in German hospitals. It's an insurance-based system. It works. It worked extremely well.
You've got a much better chance of coming out alive with any
Did they get a bill at the end of it? No. Did the British government get a bill at the end of it? No, because it was all part of insurance, because it's an insurance-based system and everything else. Whenever there were emergencies going in through A&E, and I had to take people into A&E, was there the sort of waiting list? No.
What were they saying? Give us your credit card.
No, that didn't happen. And then was when follow-up treatment was needed, it came. Right, we can book in with a consultant next Tuesday. Would that do? Or if that doesn't work,
is that too far away? Yeah.
Is that too far away?
As opposed to next year.
We apologise for having to wait.
I know, but this is the thing. People seem to think we've got this idea. There's the NHS and there's the American insane system.
Yeah.
No. Virtually every other country in the world has something that works with better outcomes than us. A lot of them for around the same amount of money. And this whole but it's free. Well, it's not free. It's paid for. Free at the point of need, I accept. But that said, France, Ireland, you think Ireland's not some mad capitalist, haven. You have to pay like 30 quid to get an appointment at the GP.
Yes.
But again, if you're low income, you get it for free. But I tell you what, you don't have to wait for an appointment.
Same as Germany, same as Netherlands, same as Denmark, same as
this is the norm. And one of the reasons, by the way, why you can't get a GP appointment, there's a lot of people who go all the time when they don't need to go. Just as an ex-GP's daughter and a receptionist, I can assure you of that. Right, look, I want to hear your thoughts on that. calls already coming in thick and fast on that. 0344 499 1000. Who do you blame, the staff, the bosses or the NHS? The fact these things keep happening, it can't just be down to individual stuff. There must be a systemic problem. And if you're allergic to a problem, you don't do anything about it. If you're the manager, I mean, bearing in mind these managers, they're on six-figure salaries.
Yeah. And if it's in one trust, it's going to be in others.
Yeah, I mean, we know because there have been other NHS scandals. Yeah. I want to hear your thoughts on that, but also your thoughts on where we are politically. Overnight, Donald Trump has been asked about Andy Burnham. Apparently, Andy Burnham's team hasn't reached out at all to the White House, but he's described Andy Burnham as extreme. I don't know the guy. He's extremely liberal, and he asked whether he wanted to be the first world leader to meet Mr. Burnham since he becomes Prime Minister. He said, no, but I think we're probably of a different persuasion. And he talked about, he's a mayor of a town, the great city of Manchester. Well, I mean, the metropolitan area is, 3 million people?
That's a small town in the United States.
That is a small town in the United States. He goes, I don't know anything. I see that he was, I guess, the mayor of a town, and he is extremely liberal. So that, by the way, is a massive insult coming from a Republican president. And given that Burnham is yet again another one of the Labour people who, when in government, talked about anyone who fawns over Donald Trump should be ashamed of themselves. Well, good luck with that, Andy Burnham, when it comes to the tariffs and goodness knows what. But the big thing here going on really is who is going to be in Burnham's cabinet. And again, we're still waiting. We haven't, 9th of July, we're going to have to wait until the nominations open, and the 16th of July till they close. Frankly, this could all be speeded up. Burnham doesn't want it speeded up. He still hasn't decided on his team. And if you haven't decided on your team, that means you haven't decided on your policies. But Ed Miliband, apparently he was his front runner. He's now cooling on him. Unlike the planet, apparently. See what I did there? Because so much concern that the city will go, you're what? Are you crazy? Yeah. And how much of a problem he has been in the Starmer cabinet as well, because basically no cuts on net zero stuff, no drilling in the North Sea to pay for defence and the like. He is a problem. I mean, now they're talking about bringing his brother, David Miliband, back to possibly be Foreign Secretary. Again, there isn't a single person in the Parliamentary Labour Party until last Friday who was considered good enough to be a Prime Minister, and not a single person in the Parliamentary Labour Party or ranks who they think could be up to being Foreign Secretary. That tells you how lacklustre this all is.
Oh, very much so, and you can see that across the board. But yeah, I think Andy Burnham has recognised that the markets would be very spooked if Ed Miliband became Chancellor, and he doesn't want to do that. Donald Trump will measure him on two things: one, defence spending, and second, drill, baby, drill, and whether he does that or not.
I think the immigration issue might come up.
Yeah, he'll do that. He'll want to see something in that. But you defence and drill, baby, drill, because those are the two big things from Donald.
What I mean, Rachel Reeves definitely out and about manoeuvring, angling for a job. I mean,
that's funny.
She took an absolute pasting from Kemi Badenoch at PMQs yesterday.
I saw it.
I mean. Wow, do not get on the wrong side of Kemi Badenoch. And it was interesting, the Prime Minister did defend her, did not defend Ed Miliband's role in office, defended Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary. She grew up in poverty, didn't at any point defend her record as Education Secretary.
Well, of course not.
That's what Kemi Badenoch called her a spiteful class warrior for the VAT on school fees. Bridget Phillipson hit back. She's done some interviews today. They had a bust-up afterwards. The Speaker even sort of said, can people tone down their language because our constituents will speak to us in the language we use. But I mean, it's a bit, again, as always, it's a little bit much when you've got the likes of the Labour people saying, oh, you called me a spiteful class warrior, how awful. Sorry, you were mates with Angela Rayner, and she's going to be back in the cabinet and was Deputy Prime Minister, who called all Tories scum at a public meeting. Bridget Phillipson has herself described Nick Timothy, the Shadow Home Secretary, as racist for speaking out against, Islamist prayer in Trafalgar Square. I mean, so you can call people racist. You can use all this sort of language. The stuff they talk about, hate about Nigel Farage, the way they talk about Nigel Farage and indeed Kemi Badenoch and Tories or people on the Reform generally. And yet they're saying, oh, we didn't like the nasty, hurty words you said to us. I mean, give us a break, love.
Yeah, well, and she came out then on social media with lots of statistics that she'd taken out of a report that her own department had produced. However, what she omitted was the top line of the statistics. And the top line said that there had been a 0.7% decrease in the number of teachers.
Which is exactly what Kemi Badenoch pointed out. The whole point of the VAT on private schools was not to penalise families on private schools or have their kids lose out their education at private schools. And we have seen thousands of children moved out of private schools. A lot of them, by the way, because the schools are closed down, and they are actually special schools, special schools for children with learning disabilities who would otherwise not, not catered for in the state sector. Bridget Phillipson going, oh, she wants all these kids to be included in their local school. There's a reason why they were moved out. A, they weren't getting taught, and B, they couldn't cope, and C, they were disrupting a lot of learning for other kids. So, sorry, love, there's a reason why it all happened. But extraordinarily, and Jamie Badenoch said, actually the number of, this is supposed to be, you tax in private schools, and that money will go to help kids in state schools. Yeah. You can argue, you can make that as a justifiable political point. So they did that, and as you say, and as Kemi Badenoch pointed out, the number of teachers, which is the only thing that really matters and is 80% of the school budget, the number of teachers in state schools went down. Yeah. So they didn't deliver the very thing they said it would deliver. Yeah. It was class war.
Complete class war. And, the private school fees that are paid by the parents are taxed already because it's their income. So they're probably...
Well, everything we spend is taxed already.
Exactly. But then to put another 20% on top of that, and there is a general rule that you do not tax education. And therefore, it was applied spitefully, and they turned around and said there's a tax break against it. There wasn't, and the majority of parents who are putting their kids into private school, as you said, with the special needs,
they're not living in stately homes.
They're not living in stately homes. They are your middle class parents who've worked their backsides off and just want to try and help the children get a step forward.
My husband grew up in a housing estate, Stoke-on-Trent, and left to work at a paper factory at the age of 16. We're very happy with the money we spent on our daughter's school fees. Yeah. Best money I've ever spent in my entire life. There was a diving holiday in the Maldives, actually. It could go either way, those ones. That was a lot cheaper than the school fees. And I genuinely, didn't occur to us we wouldn't send our kid to the state school. And the only reason, if you didn't, basically, my local area, so 2 comps. One of them Jihadi John went to, and the teacher got done for embezzlement, and the other one, 2 14-year-olds have been accused of stabbing a 12-year-old in the school playground, on school grounds, in the last year. I'm so sorry, I'm not sending my kid to one of those schools. Sorry, I'm not. I'm just not.
The problem with a lot of the comprehensives, and especially around inner cities, and I'm going to cause a bit of controversy with this, is that the standard is to bring everyone down to the lowest common denominator, whereas in the more progressive state schools, the more progressive grammar schools, and in private schools, it's actually to encourage the brightest and best, and it's not
not your job to bring up other pupils. That's not your job. I refuse to play along with that. My thing was I couldn't bear the thought of battling against the mad state system for all those years, and I was privileged enough and had enough money in the bank that I didn't have to do that, and I'm very, very relieved. If you're lucky enough to have a good state school in your area, well done you. We weren't. Let's also just talk, I mean, time is against us, but the heatwave hysteria. We did have the UK's hottest June day ever. Again, June day ever. Since the 1880s, when they started doing records. And those records are often with temperature gauges that used to be in the middle of the countryside and now are in suburban or severely urban areas near tarmac, which heats, we'll all know. You know your home's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, even though the temperature might not be going up anymore. It's because everything just retains the heat. It never gets a chance to get cool. But at 36.1 Celsius high is likely to be broken again today. Look, it's unpleasant. It's not nice. Mr. Lizard Man, sleeping fine last night. Only, I think, 1 in 20 homes in this country have any version of aircon in.
I don't.
I can't get aircon because I know the moment I get aircon, I know for a fact we will have rainy summers forever, and I'd rather have some heat. But people being told to work from home. We've had air conditioning actually being removed from homes under net zero clampdown because it doesn't comply with the energy policy of the local council. I mean, all that sort of madness going on. But again, I mean, the climate hysterics are just loving this, aren't they? But they've been making exactly the same claims if it was raining all summer.
Oh, of course, and everything that's coming in. But people pay money to go to the Middle East or into the Mediterranean to have these sorts of temperatures.
To be fair, you are by a pool or a sea.
You're getting it for free. Then. Well, yeah, but then some of us have worked in temperatures. I remember.
Some of us had proper jobs. That's what he wanted to say.
Having to walk a kilometre from accommodation to where I was working, it was 50, 55 degrees in the shade.
Ouch.
I had two 2-litre bottles of water. I had to wear my flak jacket and my helmet in doing it as well, and do that. And there was no shade as I walked along. The two 2-litre bottles of water had gone by the time I got in there. But hey, yeah, that's just the way it was.
He's a proper man, is what he wanted to say, and you're all lightweights. That was the subtext of that. Man up, everybody. Put your flak jacket on. And
your helmet.
And your camouflage and your helmet. And man the hell up. 10:27 is the time. There's so much more I want to talk about. We always talk. It's just too much to talk about. Look, a lot of it very serious. We can have a little bit of fun with a few other things as well. Nicola Sturgeon being told to make public that written statement she gave to the police. I mean, the woman's got terrible eyesight. Hasn't got a clue in even her own home. We're going to talk also about Denmark planning to ban Islamic call to prayer. I really want to get to that. And the latest revelations about what happened on the night that Henry Novak was stabbed to death. It just utter incompetence by the police. 10:27 is the time. Up next, going to take your calls coming in about the NHS and that awful maternity scandal. Give us a call if you want to have your say. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
You've got to be single-minded about your plan. You've got to follow through and not back down. The geography helps countries like Australia, but also the UK. I mean, across Europe, you know, they look the other way. I think unintentionally, all those years ago, one regulation changes in a province in Germany, and all of a sudden you get a wave of mass migration. The thing about immigration is this: if you get it wrong, the consequences are generational.
The UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. This is Talk, the home of common sense. It's 10:30. Coming up in just a couple of moments, we'll talk to Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun. First up, let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number that Martin in Nottingham has called. Martin, you want to talk about this NHS maternity scandal. Who do you blame?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't talking about the maternity scandal, actually, with your...
I'm so sorry.
No, I was just talking about the NHS in general.
Yep, well, but that's the thing, as I've said, is it the NHS as a problem in total, yeah?
Yeah. OK, so briefly, 50 years of income tax, 50 years of national insurance, and let down desperately badly by an NHS I had barely ever called on for help, other than occasionally see the doctor, and they let me down absolutely atrociously, so I've got no time for them at all.
Just what would you mind saying briefly how they let you down?
I'll make it brief. Needed an operation on my stomach. Was told it wasn't life-threatening. They would do it when it became life-threatening.
Oh,
and
great.
I said, well, can you absolutely guarantee me if it becomes life-threatening? Yeah, if it becomes, will you absolutely definitely do it that day? And they said it would all depend on the workload. So I said, forget it. I had to take a bank loan out, and I'm still paying it back. And the other time, I had a shoulder operation. No bed, sent home, maximum morphine, crawling the floor at 4 o'clock in the morning, phoned up 999, and twice they hung up on me because I wasn't a priority, and I ended up making my own way there. Yeah. to spend 7 hours on a trolley to tell my wife, take me home, this is pointless. So
yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people have a good experience. A lot of people don't. And again, I've got elderly relatives who've needed hip operations, knee operations, being told basically, you're looking at 18 months of being in agony and pain, unable to walk properly. And sorry, what have we paid for? I mean, it's just, that's the thing. A lot of people, why do you think so many people still defend the NHS? It's like, oh, this is great, because this stuff doesn't happen in other countries. All the other West European countries, Western European, Eastern European, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, this doesn't happen.
No, I would have been more than happy all my life to pay a small extra fee to know that when I needed it, my God, I would get it. Why should I? I'm now in debt because of. It's a sore subject.
I completely understand. Because people say, well, it's free, but it's not. It's increasingly more and more people are going private. People who are not going private because they're just going to splash the cash for a fancy central London hotel room style hospital. They just need to get the operation to either stay alive or to be in vague comfort and get back to work or whatever. Martin, I'm so sorry about that. I appreciate that call, though. Thank you. John is in Dorset. John, what do you want to say?
Oh, hello, Julia. Nice to talk to you. My frustration is that we do not implement the recommendations of the reports that are written each time these maternity scandals happen.
Yeah. What's the point in even doing the report?
It's absolutely I'm an engineer. If there's a problem with a product, a safety issue, it is fixed at source. The reports, the problem's identified, it's fixed.
But it's like aeroplanes. If there's an aeroplane crash, you investigate. What's the problem? And then you fix it.
It's just crazy. I don't know, this country has to wake up. It's not just the maternity scandals. No. It's all sorts of inquiries. Recommendations, time and time again, are not implemented.
Why do you think that is?
It's just, there's a cover-up culture, and the government is equally guilty of not enforcing. As the paymaster of these public institutions, it must instruct the institution to implement the recommendations, unless there is a very good reason, and they have to justify the reason, and that has to be approved by the author of the report. He may or may not approve it.
That's a good point. There needs to be a time limit as well. The other thing is also individual accountability. By all accounts, although the chief executive, the current chief executive of this hospital, the Nottingham University's NHS Trust, did take part, and other senior staff all encouraged to take part. The staff who've been in charge at the time of these things, I think virtually none of them actually cooperated. Well, that's outrageous.
It's shocking. It's shocking. And I refer to the Francis report specifically in 2013. That followed the mid-staff scandal. And there were specific recommendations, including there should be transparency and freedom for staff to speak up.
Yeah.
And that was only partially implemented.
And by the way, no good boss should want their staff not to speak up when there's a problem, specifically when, I don't know, babies are dying. Doesn't seem unreasonable, does it? I mean, we
have to implement these recommendations unless there's a very good reason. Otherwise, we're just costing lives, wasting taxpayers' money, round and round the circle. We're just becoming a country which writes beautiful reports, very good reports, but they're not implemented. What is the point? The country has to wake up and demand that the government must instruct the institutions to implement the recommendations, and they have to justify why they cannot.
I couldn't agree. Couldn't agree with you more, John. Fantastic call, and I understand the anger and frustration and upset in your voice as well. I think we should all feel that way. I worry that not many of the people involved in terms of running these hospitals do feel that, which is a concern. We're going to take a very quick break, then we're going to be talking to Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, find out what he thinks of that and all things going on in our political world. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Trevor Kavanagh is on the line. He's the Sun's former political editor. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Before we get into all the shenanigans going on in Westminster, look, you and I have both been around quite a long time. I've seen so many scandals in the NHS, so many reviews, so many reports, and I'm sure you, like everyone else, including John, our caller just now, share the same frustration that we seem to be in this non-stop circle of scandal. Nothing gets done for years. People speak out. Eventually, they're forced into do a review. They do a review. There's a report. Everyone says, shock, horror, everything needs to change. Nothing changes, and then we wait until the next one. Why does that keep happening, and who do you blame?
Well, as you say, we've been around a long time, Julia, me much longer than you, but I do not remember, and I'd be interested if you do, a single incident involving life and death, including children, newborn babies, unborn babies, and their mothers, when anyone's head has rolled as a result. Who has ever been sacked?
Yep.
And the problem is, and you know it as well as anybody, it's because this is the public sector.
Yep.
And the public sector is also right now in government. So nothing will be done by this government either.
No, I mean, it's absolutely so. I mean, it's just shocking. And again, if babies dying needlessly in birth or soon after birth, and mums dying, you know, during birth, isn't enough to make you go, oh, maybe we need to do things a bit better, a bit differently. I just don't know what will. I defies belief. Let's talk about the next government, though. Looks almost dead certain now. It will be Andy Burnham as our next Prime Minister. Could be as soon as 17th of July. But the race is on to be his next Chancellor. It's a bit interesting that someone has planned for ages. I mean, January he was looking at the Gaunton Downton constituency, and then, of course, one in Makerfield last Friday. But, I mean, all this plotting to become Prime Minister, but apparently no plan if he actually got the job, not wanting it to come a little bit too sooner than he'd expected. But choosing your Chancellor, surely that's something that somebody who had a plan for government would already have done.
Yes, and it's come to the point already within the space of days and even before Burnham walks into the job, when people are saying, who cares, because it's not going to change. They elected one dud, they dumped him after less than 2 years. They're now about to saddle themselves in the country with another dud who hasn't a clue. I mean, you'd think if he really wanted the job, which he clearly has done for the last 12 months or longer, because he's called himself the King of the North, he's strutted about putting
I would have to defend him on this. I don't think he's called himself King of the North.
Oh, I think he has.
Has he? All right, I thought he hadn't.
Anyway, it doesn't
stand
matter.
corrected.
That's what he is now labelled as, and he's very happy, I think, under that label. And the simple fact is that he hasn't prepared at all. Yeah. Why hasn't he had a few weeks talking to the various people who are now lining up as his economic advisors? Why hasn't he got it all laid out? After all, if he's ambitious, which he surely is, surely he should at least provide some evidence for what he thinks is his right to be the ruler.
Yeah, it's absolutely extraordinary. I've watched so many interviews with MPs who are supporting him, whether they're in the government right now or backbenchers, loyalists, saying, you know, he's going to be a great campaigner, you know, he's a great communicator, and then whenever they're asked, so what are the policies that you support? What is going to be? Well, the thing is, you know, he wants change. Okay, change to what? And the answer comes there none. I mean, the closest I got the other day with a Labour Party former press officer was he believes in social justice. And who doesn't? You know, and he wants growth. Well, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves wanted growth. How'd that work out for us?
Well, I mean, look, I think this great white hope in a black T-shirt is actually already crashing on landing. This is the most disastrous launch I think we've ever seen, and I think it is doomed, and I'd like to be the first to say so, it is doomed to actually fail even to take off, because the polls are already showing what the public thinks about this Chancellor who's decided that he's going to take power. The ratings for the Labour Party have fallen, and Burnham's personal ratings have fallen. What does he have to offer? And I don't think he can offer anything without basically sparking civil war within his own party.
And this is the issue, isn't it? And who he chooses as Chancellor, whether it's Ed Miliband, whether it's Wes Streeting, whether it's anyone else, the names in the frame, that will be very telling about what he wants to do. But whatever he wants to do, it's really this idea that he can bring unity where there's been division. We keep hearing about that. But politics is about division. Politics is about a battle of ideas and persuading people where you can that your plan is right. But it's where you want to get to, but also how you want to do it. And you can't just have, let's all be unified about it. Yeah, but you can't be unified about it unless you know what it is you're actually going to try and do. And the various different chancellors' names that have been brought in are going to be absolutely crucial. If it's Ed Miliband, that's a very different government from, say, a Wes Streeting one, or if Rachel Reeves was kept on, God forbid, or there's possibilities. Yvette Cooper, she's an economist by trade before she went into politics. Whether she was brought in, these would all be very different Burnham governments.
Yes, and I think that the Prime Minister, any Prime Minister, especially a new Prime Minister, the most important thing he needs on day one is the authority that goes with the job. Yeah. And I think the fact that he is so indecisive about who he's going to pick as Chancellor is an indication that that authority is already shot as far as Andy Burnham is concerned. There's no doubt whatsoever that Ed Miliband has been behind the scenes as the kingmaker in all this, and he was expecting, and I think so was Andy Burnham, that his reward would be Chancellor. And yet I think we know that he will not be Chancellor, which means that Andy Burnham hasn't got the authority to appoint his kingmaker. Who
he wants, yeah. It is extraordinary, isn't it? And again, it's interesting, that he's, you can be a very popular mayor of a town, as he was described as by Donald Trump overnight, extremely liberal, and you can be very popular doing that job, and very likeable, as he is, and you will know him well from your days in Westminster. He's a very pleasant, charming, nice guy. Is nice what we need right now?
There are plenty of nice people about, Julia, as you know, but they're not putative prime ministers. And look,
I'd like someone who was absolutely horrible but could get the job done.
Exactly. I think that's one of the key requirements. So you've got to be ruthless but also effective. Yeah. What you've had is a prime minister in the shape of Starmer coming in with a landslide, with that sort of authority that comes with the job at that point. And within weeks or months, Donald Trump was sneering at him and treating him with contempt. I don't think that Burnham is even going to get that little brief honeymoon. I think that Trump is going to be absolutely contemptuous of this man who's blown in from a small town up north somewhere.
3 million people, come on.
In Trump's eyes,
Yeah.
So look, he's not going to be able to do anything significant on defence. He hasn't got any money. He can't spend anything that's going to make a difference. He can't make cuts to raise that money. He's absolutely strapped. And honestly, I think that the whole country, as far as the labour movement is concerned, trade unions and all the rest of them, have made a catastrophic error here at our expense, the expense of the British people.
An error in choosing Andy Burnham or an error in ousting Keir Starmer? Because even if it's the same policies, Burnham at least is a better communicator. And I don't know about you, even if it was all exactly the same policies and it was still dire, at least I can bear to listen to Andy Burnham speak.
Well, actually, then you make it two catastrophic errors. One, picking Keir Starmer as the leader, then picking Andy Burnham, as we see. I mean, how on earth, who does he think he is, just marching in and taking this job? And I think that here is where Kemi Badenoch, yesterday, Prime Minister's question,
just about to ask you about that,
home with such amazing. I mean, honestly, it's worth rewatching several times, and I'm sure it will be. I mean, did you see the faces on the government benches? It was like a row of slapped bottoms, wasn't it?
I mean, it was absolutely vicious. We played it live on the show. We were talking about it after. We were just sort of, wow, our faces, just wow. What I absolutely loved was, I mean, she went for the Prime Minister, mocked him. She went for, I mean, there's no love lost between those two. Went for Ed Miliband, went for the Chancellor, went for the Education Secretary. That's the one that's caused the biggest row because she called her a spiteful class warrior for putting VAT on private schools and basically, but no extra money going to the schools to pay for more teachers because teachers' numbers have gone down. down at state schools under Bridget Phillipson. The Prime Minister defended very much Bridget Phillipson. Oh, she's come from poverty, but didn't defend her record as an Education Secretary. There was then a spat behind the Speaker's chair, wasn't there, between Kemi Badenoch and Bridget Phillipson and others, a furious bust-up. But what's fascinating is Bridget Phillipson's like, this, this language is awful and, it should tone it down. I'm sorry, Angela Rayner called Tories scum. And Bridget Phillipson herself has called the Shadow Home Secretary a racist. I mean, they can't have it both ways.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. The left has seized, or at least it thinks it's seized, command of our language, whether it's racism, fascism, sexism, you name it, they've got an ism to go with it. And here we saw someone who was forthright and honest, and frankly, I think the whole world, certainly this country, will resonate with that expression, spiteful socialism, which is the hallmark of this government. They simply want to be spiteful to anyone who has earned a living and has accumulated any assets or savings. And that includes everything from homes to property of any sort. They simply don't like it. And look at farmers. Going back to the issue of the National Health Service, it is their sacred faith. But insurance is the answer, and they simply will not touch it.
And not only they've not touched it,
insurance tax deductible.
Anyone who even talks about that is somehow an evil person who wants people to die. I mean, again, they talk the talk, but there we are. Trevor Kavanagh, it's always great to talk to you. Former political editor of The Sun, thank you very much. Quick response from Philip Ingram.
Well, Trevor's talking common sense completely. Kemi Badenoch, you pulled a blinder yesterday in tearing apart all of the elements of Starmer's government. And
it was brutal.
It was brutal, but she wasn't sending a message to Starmer's government. She was sending a message to Andy Burnham.
I forget, that's how forgettable he is.
Yes, exactly.
There we are. 10:48 is the time. Up next, we're going to talk about, well, heatwave chaos, or is it just climate hysteria? We'll talk to the brilliant Ross Clark. This is Talk.
You've got to be single-minded about your plan, and you've got to follow through and not back down. The geography helps countries like Australia, but also the UK. Across Europe, they look the other way. I think unintentionally, all those years ago, one regulation changes in a province in Germany, and all of a sudden you get a wave of mass migration. The thing about immigration is this: if you get it wrong, the consequences are generational.
The UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk about the heat wave. Very annoyingly, my guest in the studio, Philip Ingram, is totally unbothered by the heat wave because he's a real man and he's, marched in full fatigues and good flak jackets and goodness knows what. Was it 51 Celsius?
Between 50 and 55 Celsius.
All right. OK, so basically we all need to man up. But I've got to be honest with you.
In boots as well.
All right, let it go. Where was it, by the way?
Iraq.
In Iraq, fair enough. Again, you've got to wonder why the Iraqi team in the World Cup needed a hydration break in 21 degrees or whatever it was they were playing against France the other day. But anyway, everyone is in a tiz. We've got a heat wave. We've seen the June record broken. We could be heading for 40 degrees, likely to be broken again today. Some schools are closed, some nurseries are closed, offices are closed. The BBC, of course, they all work from home. But I think they think that every single day. But why are we in such a tiz? And is it all down to, the the world dying because of climate change. Let's talk about it all with Ross Clark. He's author of the brilliant book, Not Zero, How an Irrational Target Will Impoverish You, Help China and Won't Even Save the Planet. Good morning to you once again, Ross.
Julia.
First of all, I'd love to know your thoughts on the heatwave hysteria. I mean, half an hour at a time on the BBC news, all about the heat waves, how we're all coping, will we all die, lots of warnings about how to cope. I mean, do any other countries behave like this?
Well, in many countries, southern European countries, for example, what the weather we've had this week would just be sort of normal summer weather. If you're not used to it, obviously it does come as a bit more of a shock, but it's well within the ability of human beings to tolerate this kind of weather. It does cause a sort of elevated number of deaths among sort of elderly people and so on, people who are desperately ill and perhaps on the point of dying anyway. But not
as
anything
does
to the
extreme cold.
Yeah, as does extreme cold. And extreme cold kills more than 10 times as many people as extreme cold as extreme heat in this country, not just in this country, but around the world and even in Africa.
Yeah.
And we keep being fed this spurious statistic that the heat wave in 2022 killed 3,000 people. And that really needs challenging, because that comes from an Office of National Statistics analysis, which what they did is they took the number of excess deaths, the number of deaths in those hot weeks in 2022, and compared them with the 5-year average, although missing out 2020 when there was COVID. And they came up with this figure, 3,200 excess deaths due to the heat. But what they didn't tell you in that study, but they did do an separate analysis, the number of excess deaths was running way above normal for the whole of 2022. There were over 40,000 excess deaths over
was any of that
2022.
Was any of that to do with we got that that boomer generation, my parents' generation, where there are just more elderly people who are more likely to die, or was that within the expected number of deaths?
It was, well, yes, as the population ages, you would get a higher number of expected deaths. But, that bubble in excess deaths in 2022 is due to a multiple...
it wasn't due to the heat. And even so, as you say...
claim all those deaths due to the heat
because it was heat. But this, again, everyone gets very hysterical about it. And as you say, cold kills more. But also, we're constantly told, it's all due to climate change, and we wouldn't be having this extreme heat if it wasn't due to climate change. But if it's a lot hotter than normal is, but climate change is predicted, man-attributed climate change is about, actually incredibly small average global increases in temperature, not a heat wave of, 40 degrees. I think we got above 40, didn't we, a couple of years ago? But if it was raining, or if it was just just cloudy, or just average all year, they would say that was also, well, we haven't got a good summer because of climate change. We've got rain because of climate change. It doesn't matter what the weather is. If it was unusually cold, we're always told it's due to climate change. And as soon as we have anything at all that's not completely and utterly predictable British weather at the exact time of year we expected, such as we have predictable weather ever, as anyone who's ever tried to plan a party or a barbecue can understand, they always blame climate change. Is there any legitimacy to that?
Well, global temperatures have risen, and we are getting more frequently high temperatures in this country. We're getting fewer extreme cold temperatures. But I mean, I noticed that sort of some climate change lobby hedging their bets. Now they sort of latching onto this sort of Atlantic system of currents in the Atlantic, and say, oh, well, that could break down and could give us some extremely cold winters. Well, you just think of what's going on there. Okay, well, if it's cold in future, it's climate change, and if it's warm in future, it's climate change. By the way, we've got to stop calling this a 40 Celsius heat wave, which I've seen this numerous headlines, numerous broadcasts this week calling it a 40 Celsius heat wave. The highest temperature recorded so far was 36.1 Celsius yesterday in Gosport, and that is nowhere near 40. It may get up to 40 in the next few days, but until it does, we're going to stop calling this. We've got to stop calling it a 40.
But also, I mean, the weather maps, and everyone's making all these comparisons over the last few years. You know, I mean, 2 years ago we had the heat wave and comparisons. You know, how much more relaxed people were about these things and I was one of those kids in 1976 when it was very hot. And I said before, I was living in America. It was it was genuinely 40 in terms of Fahrenheit, 40 degrees higher. It was 120 Fahrenheit in the shade where I was living for months on end. Life just went on, really.
Well, it did, and I was 9 years old in 1976. I was at primary school. There's absolutely no question of the school closing for heat. We just went into school as we did normally. I think I went to secondary school. We used to go into something called shirt sleeve order when it was hot. We were allowed to take our blazers off. That was it.
That's as far as it got. And what do you make of the fact that, I mean, people say, the climate hysterics say, well, this is all down to climate change, which is due to man, due to the Industrial Revolution, how terrible that is. The useful thing about the Industrial Revolution is we can make things now. We can make things like, I don't know, air conditioning units. I mean, there's going to come a point where we'll, like most of the rest of the world that has hot weather, we'll just start installing aircon in our homes. But we've had cases where people have actually had aircon required to be legally removed. Camden, my local council in North London, requiring someone to remove their air conditioning unit, saying it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, well, this is a ludicrous thing, isn't it? We've got government telling us on the one hand, the killer heat, we're all going to die of the heat waves, it's going to get far, far worse with climate change. And at the same time, denying people the very sort of technology which would allow to cope with that. I mean, there's absolutely no sense whatsoever. What the planning rule is that sort of, you build a new building, a residential building, you've got to prove, you first got to say, well, we'll put fans in. We've got to find some other way of dealing with the heat other than air conditioning. Air conditioning is told, that can be your last resort. The trouble is we're putting up all these very well insulated buildings, and what happens in hot weather? Sun shines through the windows, that turns into heat. You've got heat sources within buildings through cooking and through human bodies, and the heat can't get out.
Yeah, and it's almost like exactly. So we came up with a solution which other countries are using, but they're opposed to that because of climate change. I mean, the irony of this. Anyway, I think Ross Clark is very much agreeing with Philip Ingram, which everyone just needs to get on with it and man up. Author of Not Zero. It's such a brilliant book. I cannot recommend enough. Ross Clark, always so good to talk to you and get your voice of reason. Lots more coming up. More on that NHS scandal, more on Burnham and his Chancellor. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Very much appreciate your company, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. If you've missed anything from the show already, do have a look at my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up, we're going to be talking more about that extraordinary report yesterday published into what's been happening at an NHS trust where hundreds of babies and mothers were left injured or died as a result of what the report's author called a toxic culture, where women were ignored and mistakes covered up for years at a time. Now, we're also going to be talking about the latest shenanigans with Andy Burnham and his plans to appoint his cabinet. Who is his chancellor? Crucially going to be, why Donald Trump described him as just extremely liberal and a mayor of a town. Also, we're going to be talking about the latest police failings exposed over the horrific murder of Henry Novak. It turns out, according to the latest body cam footage and audio that has been released with the police, that after, of course, the video, which we'd all, a horrific video we'd already seen, where he was told, after saying repeatedly, I can't breathe, I've been stabbed, and the police officer saying to him, I don't think you have, mate. It took police, after he fell unconscious, which was at the end, of course, of that video, police in total took 8 minutes. 8 minutes to discover the stab wound that had killed him. They cut off his clothes, found the stab wound, and then realised that they were actually conducting, chest compressions onto the stab wound itself. So lots to talk about. Joining me for the chat throughout the day is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Morning once again to you. Very much Mr. No Nonsense on this heatwave hysteria, by the way. Someone's just tuning in. Just tell people what you had to do back in Iraq, what you had to wear and what temperatures.
Oh, temperature between 50 and 55 degrees in the shade, but walking out in the sunshine, where my accommodation was a kilometre away from where I was having to work. No shade getting through there, and you had to wear your flak jacket and your helmet as you're walking between the two, because there's always a danger of being rocketed.
So everybody, man up, get over yourselves, carry a bottle of water on public transport, all of that. But
I took my face off every now and again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just come on, just calm down. Also, just accept that you're just going to do less in a week like this.
Yeah.
You just
move slower.
Yeah, you just move. You know that thing people often say, they go to places like the Caribbean, and and I lived in the Caribbean at one point, and you think, well, why is everyone moving so slowly? Yeah, when it's that hot and humid all the time, you're crazy to not move slowly. But anyway, look, so much to talk about. I do want to hear from you, particularly, or not anything you want to talk about, but lots of your calls already coming in on this damning report into Britain's worst maternity scandal, exposing these deadly failings in the NHS. Yet again, I mean, just again and again and again, we have these scandals. I want to know, though, who do you blame? Is it the staff themselves? Is it the bosses of these hospital trusts? Is it the NHS, the structure, the monolithic structure, the basically let's cover up any wrongdoing culture? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1, standard network rate message. Just go through the details of this. It came out yesterday on the show just before midday. We had the announcement from the former very senior midwife, Donna Ockenden, carried out a 4-year review into 2,500 cases over a 13-year period up to 2025. But this was already, being well documented in 2012. And what she discovered was absolutely horrific. And I'll tell you how many people it affected in a moment. But basically, a culture of bullying, speaking up was dangerous. Bosses' responses were about self-protection rather than patient safety. The culture was toxic. Women were ignored. Mistakes were covered up. Those who did complain were dismissed as non-medical voices and intimidated by, they said, a male-dominated panel. Bosses knew about the issues as far back as 2010. Brushed them under the carpet, and families, some of whom actually worked for the trust, and medics themselves, fought for an investigation. A 343-page report found women who were in desperate pain, turned away, treated cruelly, treated with brutality. It singled out senior managers, many of whom refused to even provide evidence to review, which is an absolute outrage. She said women were failed by a service which did not listen, did not learn, and did not respond adequately when concerns were raised. Babies died from conditions like oxygen starvation during birth, mismanaged labour, infections acquired in hospital, poor postnatal care. Others suffered serious and lifelong injuries. She said a toxic culture was allowed to take hold and was allowed to persist. This resulted in the cases they looked at in 6 mothers dying, 62 newborn babies dying, and 94 stillbirths. And in total, 520 mothers and babies over that 12-year period being severely impacted. We're not talking about someone talking sharply to you during labour. We are talking about severe impacts on their health lifelong. It's absolutely outrageous. Who do you blame, Philip?
Well, I blame a lot of the management because of the pressures that they're putting on. They don't get the time for the clinical staff to properly follow up and push their concerns through, and they'll do everything to try and stall them. And this is where there needs to be some form of personal accountability to those that were in the decision-making chain who contributed to the cover-up. All of those senior managers that refuse to give evidence should be sacked immediately.
Well, no, apparently they never get. They all move on. They get a payoff. They quietly move on somewhere else. This has happened in everyone. Yes,
they get promoted.
But I think they should all be prosecuted.
Yeah, I think
if
they should
you
be prosecuted.
find out about babies dying on your watch and you don't act. I mean, there is a side-by-side criminal investigation. We so rarely see actual prosecutions.
But the trouble is, all we're going to hear is, lessons have been learned. You can hear that across every government department. Then, as you said, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, the same lessons are going to be learned. Well, the lessons haven't been learned. You've identified some issues. You haven't dealt with them. And surprise, surprise, those issues come back and bite
there'll be
you again
another, and this has happened, another scandal, with mid-staff scandal. We've had, God, maybe years back, we had the Bristol, was it, Royal Infirmary, deaths of newborn, of children in a heart surgery unit. I mean, just again, scandal after scandal after scandal. We know the Lucy Letby case. There were issues.
But these are in a
no one wanted to what's the problem? And they're saying, maybe Lucy Letby might be innocent. It might have been a problem with this, a problem with that. But either way, a load of babies were dying, and you did nothing. You did nothing. It does defy belief for a lot of us, except when you look at the way that the NHS is treated, not just by the general public, a lot of them, although faith in the NHS and belief that that's the one and only religiously perfect system to run a healthcare system is massively falling. And thank God, because the quicker we can move from the NHS system to a system most other first world countries use, the quicker we will be saving lives and we will all live longer as a result. If you're worried about going into labour, your child, your grandchild going into labour, having your grandchildren, you're worried about getting cancer or heart disease, you've got diabetes, you want to be living in France. Frankly, you want to be living in Romania. You've got a better chance of staying alive there because they've got a system which is more responsive to patient need. And the sooner we get rid of this sort of worship of the NHS and therefore this urge to protect the institution at all costs, I think the better.
But those that come out with those cries see the NHS as buildings and as jobs, not care at the point of need, free for those that need it. Free means it's paid for.
I don't even think that. I think they think of it as their fiefdom. Well, I think you've got to remember these managers. A lot of these managers, they are on six-figure salaries.
Oh yeah, but
by the way, when they move on somewhere else, they get a payoff, and then they go to another six-figure salary. But
also, it's not just the managers. It's those that are doing the support, it's the politicians, and what they don't turn around and say is actually we designed the NHS that 50% of it is provided by the private sector. All of the GPs, dentists, pharmacists, opticians.
Can't privatise the NHS.
Well, it's private anyway. And then when you get into hospitals, most of the facility services are privatised. A lot of the tests that go out to different countries, they're privatised. Oh, we can't send them to America. Well, my father-in-law, who's quite ill at the minute, his heart traces were sent off to an American company in the United States to interpret them.
I've never understood if you go for a test, you say, OK, you get referred for the GP, and you go and sit there, get a blood test, whatever it is. When will I get? I was thinking, when will I get the results back? Well, we'll let your GP know. I know, but when? Do you have a, well, it might be tomorrow, it might be in 3 days, it might be OK. And then I have to wait for the GP to call me, I will get a message, will I check on my app? How would I find out? Where does it, can you tell me the results as well? I mean,
you don't need to know.
Exactly. God forbid. I'm just a patient. Why would I matter? But I mean, I'm not being rude. I'm just want to know when I should stop bothering my GP again. But you know that if you did it privately, yes, you pay to have the test, 150 quid or something. a lot of money, far too much for most people, to be fair, but that you would have the results guaranteed the next day, possibly even that day. And it is one of those things where it's sort of, okay, so now, why does that cost more? Because the same amount of work is being done. A blood test is being taken, and then someone is analysing it, and someone's giving a report. It's the same amount of work. It's just the speed. When we're waiting sort of 2 months for something or 2 weeks for something, can we not just literally throw every resource at things? I mean, literally every resource that we've possibly got for everyone to work. We'll pay you double, work massively overtime, and just kill that backlog. Just kill that 1 week backlog on a test result. 3-week backlog on a scan result, 2 months on starting country. Can we not? Is it beyond the wit of man to do that? Because I think, and I've always said this, I think the bloke who runs Tesco's, who can get all the barbecue stuff into the Tesco's the day that it becomes sunny out of the blue and no one saw it coming, and when you go there to get your barbecue food, it's there. The people who organise that, I reckon they'd be able to organise the NHS better.
Well, I think they would. My father ran a hospital laboratory, and some tests can take seconds to get a result from.
And
other
some
tests
take longer.
Can take a week.
We have to wait for something to,
but a lot of the stuff has
change.
been automated now, and a lot of it is outsourced. And in the testing regime, there isn't as much of a backlog as there is in the clinicians reviewing the test
that's the thing.
and getting it in.
But
That's what the backlog is.
But it's the same amount of time for the clinician. You're not, the private company and the NHS are not using any more time from anything, and yet you wait longer in the NHS. And again. And we all go, I had to wait a few weeks, but, I'm so grateful to the NHS. Why are you grateful?
It's
not a free
management.
service. You pay for it. We all pay for it. Some of us pay for it many times over and still end up not ending up using it a lot of the time because we don't or can't wait. And people say, well, we don't want a two-tier service. We already have a two-tier service. People who can afford to are walking away from the NHS. People are going abroad. I know so many people from Eastern Europe who go back to Eastern Europe to have their health care because they don't have to wait a year for a knee operation or whatever. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 4991. That's who you blame. Let's talk about Burnham. Donald Trump overnight said he's doesn't know much about the guy, but he knows he's extremely liberal. That's an insult from him. And that he's a mayor of a town. Not going to go down too well. Bearing in mind, Burnham said a few years back, as many a Labour politician did, anyone who fawns to Donald Trump should be ashamed of themselves. So looking forward to that. At the end of the day, you can't not, mate, because you have to deal with the, Trump, Trump's self-styled King of America as opposed to the King of the North. Yeah,
but Trump's own Secretary of State for War, Pete Hegseth, insulted Donald Trump beforehand. So everyone insults Donald Trump, and that's not going to...
He has to forgive and forget because there are so many.
What Donald Trump sees Andy Burnham as is a continuation of Keir Starmer. He sees Keir Starmer and the Labour Party as the Democrats. So he hates the Democrats in the United States way. And that's why he will automatically assume that he's going to be like Joe Biden. Sleepy Joe in everything that he does.
Not an unfair expectation. What do you make of the angling for jobs? Because everyone is desperate. Everyone's running
funny.
it. I'm in the selfie. Rachel Reeves. I'm in the selfie.
Funny.
Kimmy Bain having a dig at her PMQs over that. You weren't there. Your boss is resigning. You live next door, but there you were preparing for your selfie in Westminster Hall. We've already talked about Kemi Badenoch. Let's get some other stories. But there's a lot of talk about, who's going to be the Chancellor. Ed Miliband was a front runner. Certainly he expects it, and his people have been briefing that out. These stories don't appear on the front pages of newspapers from top journalists for no reason. People give them a call and tell them, who know the people. Then also, is it West Streeting? Has he done a deal? Told by some Burnham people, well, he didn't have the 81 votes. He didn't have to do a deal. And anyway, I think Burnham would rather have had the contest simply because he needs the time to prepare for office. The thing that's really obvious is if you don't know who your Chancellor's going to be, and apparently he's cooling on Ed Miliband because so much concern about the fact that he's just so wedded to net zero, wouldn't help with money for defence, which is going to be absolutely crucial in the next few years, and won't do the drilling in the North Sea, which the unions are demanding. But the fact that he can't decide between as far as we're aware, I think when he has got somebody, whoever's going to be the Chancellor, I think they'll let it be known, right? Yeah. How can you be seriously planning to be Prime Minister in a few weeks' time and we don't know who your Chancellor is?
Well, because he hasn't actually put his name in the hat for a nomination and he's keeping things quiet. I was speaking to someone yesterday who knows Andy Burnham very well, and apparently he's had a team around him and he's helping him prepare for the last year. So it'll be interesting to see the detail that comes out.
I'd love to see a bit of that prep.
Well, but
I'd be relieved if that were the case.
He's keeping a lot of close hold. Here's where my predictions are. I think Miliband won't get Chancellor. I think he'll probably get Health. I think they...
well, good luck, everybody.
I think it'll be Mahmood or... it'll be Mahmood or Streeting as Chancellor.
I don't think Jemana Mahmood wants to move.
I don't think she wants to move, but they'll take Dan Jarvis from Defence and put Dan in Mahmood's post. Mahmood will or Streeting will then either get Foreign Secretary.
And John Healey back at Defence?
No, I think he might put Al Kearns in. Al Kearns is moving very, very carefully at the minute.
There are lots of manoeuvres, aren't there?
In what's going on. John Healey will get a senior post.
Note this. We've heard all of this. I mean, I think who's Chancellor is going to be absolutely crucial. By the way, very exciting announcement today, of course. Today is the first day when that VAT cut, the summer of fun, remember the summer of fun? The VAT cut on theme parks and kids' meals comes into force. So you can get, a tenner off your sort of, 400 quid taking the kids to Alton Towers for the day, and a couple of quid off your kids' meal. Great. I mean, I don't know about you, I feel better. I wouldn't want to be on a roller coaster today, I've got to be honest with you. Actually, well done, well done, Chancellor. Rachel Reeves.
I'm so excited you can tell.
I know, Rachel Reeves, what are we going to do without you, love? I mean, genuinely, the sooner... This is my thing. Whatever it is, whoever it is, if we don't have, on a regular basis, to listen to Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, the world has got to be a better place.
The two, Starmer going is brilliant, but the two that are going that are even better are Reeves and I hope Hermer, because as Attorney General he is causing so much damage, and this is where Shabana Mahmood may be pushed to, because I believe she's a QC or a KC.
She's a lawyer, yeah, definitely a lawyer.
So she could be Attorney General quite easily, and that would reinforce and give her...
I'll tell you what, Attorney General, I mean, there's power behind the throne if you're the best mate of the Prime Minister. Attorney General's a bit of a no-man's land if you've got serious political ambition, which she absolutely does have. Although I don't think it's going to work out for her in the Labour Party because the voters, not their voters, but their party members are all insane. I know, because they keep electing. I mean, bearing in mind, they elected Jeremy Corbyn. Small point worth making. We've talked a lot about the heat wave, just the general madness of the hysteria. It's unpleasant. We all talk about it. We talk about it at the bus stop, don't you? And you talk about it when you get into the office. Oh, God, thank God I've got into the aircon. If you've got aircon, I've got to be honest with you. The aircon in this studio wasn't working for a bit. And Jeremy showed, I'm like, I can't do it. I cannot sit in a metal box. They've got rules about leaving pets and small children in locked cars. It's about the same size. I can't do it.
Apply to presenters.
They don't apply. We've got the aircon.
Unless you've got 4 legs and a tail.
Yeah, exactly. It could happen. But let's talk about some other stories. Latest on Henry Novak and his horrific murder. He bled to death last December, obviously, after he'd been handcuffed by officers who believed the claims of his killer, Vikram Dugwa, who's currently serving life behind bars, that he'd racially abused him. And of course, we all remember that horrific video. And it was the decision of Henry's parents to allow this video to come out, because I think they wanted us to know the full horror of how their son was treated by the police. And he said, he was so clear. They arrived, they were told that he was bleeding from mouth. He had blood in his mouth. They could see that. He had a wound on his face. He was clearly going in, but not coherent. I think they thought he was drunk. I think that had been mentioned, I think, in the phone call from the Digwa's brother in the 999 call we subsequently heard. And when he said repeatedly that he couldn't breathe, repeatedly that he had been stabbed, I don't think you have, mate, was the absolutely harrowing response from the police officer. A cursory check, and genuinely, I think that jumper was lifted up, I think about an inch. Literally like, oh, no, don't bother checking. And then when he passed unconscious, they dragged him to the ground, banged his head, by the way, in this audio. It took, from the moment they arrived, 8 minutes, 8 minutes before they discovered he had been stabbed. So he was unconscious. They were giving him, and not breathing, they were giving him, chest compressions, and someone else, one of them was the medics, the police was cutting off his clothing. When they cut off his clothing, they discovered the stab wound, and the response from the police officer who was doing it says, Has he been stabbed there? The female officer says, yes, he's got a stab. There's a mark there. The male officer says, that makes it worse. He's got a stab. I'm pushing on her. We don't know what the swear word is. I think we can guess it probably began with an F. Stab wound. And then they were ripping more clothing. I mean, and then the female officer says, I mean, are these people not trained in medical stuff at all? That's okay, it's fine, it's not coming out, it's fine, keep going, it's not bleeding out. No, it was bleeding in. That's more dangerous. That's what he died of. Lack of training for these police officers, although they've gone through their DEI training, and just total failure just to do the basics of the job. So many police officers told us, you would lift up their whole chest, you would be looking.
They came in with a preconceived bias, and this is where the
racist drug,
the woke training that they came in. Now that preconceived bias was reinforced by the family when they phoned in the 999, who you gave a story. So the whole family should be charged with murder or manslaughter. Full stop.
Well, certainly conspiracy.
He died. So it's more than a conspiracy.
But they weren't there at the time when he was stabbed.
But they were there.
They are facing some charges regarding weapons.
Exactly, but they were there whenever the police were there, those that we saw them standing around there, and they were continuing to reinforce the excuses. So this is part of the collective responsibility that you get across the board. I'm sorry, they should be locked away. The police officers need to be retrained to go in with no bias whatsoever. Assume everything had been told
the guy wasn't a threat. It wasn't like he said I've been stabbed and he was stabbing at them. He was lying on the ground prone. You could just easily, I mean, it's just it's absolutely terrifying. And whether or not he could have been saved, given the wounds he had,
we don't know yet.
But again, it's the callousness of his last few moments alive. We also got some latest stats on some migrant numbers, not the boat numbers at the moment. God knows how high they'll be this week. But more than 60,000 migrants have no right to be in the country. This is a leaked government report. Published in The Sun. It's from the Immigration Enforcement report. 62,675,000, quote, possible overstayers as of last July. That's people basically staying here after their visa expired. I mean, I'm sorry, but there are probably about 2 million of them. I mean, I genuinely, they have no idea who's in this country. Bearing in mind, they didn't know how many Europeans were in this country when we left the EU, and they thought it was 2.5 million. I think it ended up being 5. So I'm sorry, they haven't got a clue who's here. And more than 50,000 illegal migrants and foreign criminals have gone missing in the UK after absconding, according to internal Home Office figures, including 1,200 foreign national offenders recorded as absconders on government systems. I mean, our authorities have no idea what is going on in this country. They're very busy. They want to do facial recognition scanning of us. They want us to have digital ID, because apparently this will help everything. Just keep track of people. Seal our borders so we know who's in and out, and then keep track of the people who aren't supposed to be here. Leave the rest of us alone.
We need a department of bounty hunters in the same way that you get debt collectors. Let's set up a department and we pass all the details into them.
Or ICE.
And give them a bonus for every single person that they find that's overstayed, so they can chuck them out. That would save us a fortune.
No, you just chucked out and you never get to come back in again. It's just mind-blowing, isn't it? Also, fantastic story from Denmark. They've been pretty sane on a lot of things. They didn't have the mass immigration issue that Sweden had, and equally the huge escalation in violent and sexual crimes, which we have seen in the countries. Again, it's not rhetoric. That has been absolutely proven, and they actually release their stats. A lot of forcing us to release more of our stats in terms of certainly the immigration status and the nationality of people committing crimes. And there is a clear difference between different countries. But they are looking at, this is Denmark's immigration minister, Morten Bodskov. He's from the centre-left, interestingly, Social Democrats Party. They've announced plans to ban the Islamic call to prayer across the country, saying parts of the country feel like a suburb of Islamabad. He's criticised the creeping Islamisation in Denmark. He says it's taking up too much of the public space. So the call to prayer, the adhan, is performed 5 times a day to summon Muslim worshippers to their mosque, traditionally via loudspeakers in minarets. If you're ever in a Muslim country, you can't escape that. But basically, they are trying to do this. It's the 3rd time the Danish government has tried to do this in the last few years. And basically, he says the call to prayer should not be heard over Danish rooftops. It has no place in Denmark, and you shouldn't be any doubt whether you've ended up in a suburb of Islamabad when you walk around Copenhagen. Now, some parts of the country, Copenhagen, they have bylaws that forbid the call to prayer being broadcast from loudspeakers because of strict noise limits, but it happens elsewhere. I'm happy to say, freedom of worship I absolutely support, even as an atheist, but absolutely vital in a free country. But I don't think you going to church, or you going to your mosque, or you going to your synagogue or your temple, whatever it is, should be imposed on anyone else. I've got to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of the early morning Sunday church bells. If you want to go to church, go to church. I don't see why I need to be woken up by it. But certainly the Islamic call to prayer 5 times a day, every day.
Well, and the first at dawn, which is early.
If that is your faith, by all means. But I don't think you should impose it on other people.
Yeah,
I don't even think that should be up for debate.
And the Danes are being very progressive. From what I understand, I think they've banned not just the burqa, but the hijab and the niqab as well.
I think like France in schools and universities and things like that.
Exactly. So they're turning around to everyone saying, look, this is our culture. If you want to come here, please come and join our culture. We don't mind if what religion you're from or anything else, but don't do anything to undermine our culture.
And again, we're always told, when in Rome, when you're British, when you're European, we're always told, when in Rome, well, you should be covering yourself up, you should show appropriate clothing if you're in an Islamic country, but we don't expect a return courtesy.
You take half the crowd from London or half the crowd from this building and put them into Saudi Arabia and get them to go down to the local shop. I think not many of the young ladies would survive whatsoever without being arrested and then abused. And people will respect
sexually harassed.
Yes, and people will respect what happens in Saudi Arabia and say, well, that's what happens in Saudi Arabia. We need to bring similar rules in so our culture isn't undermined.
All in favour. Let's try and get an interview though. Morton Budscoff. I think our audience would love to hear from him. 11:28 is time. We're going to take a break. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Do give us a call on that. 0344 499 1000. And of course, lots of your calls coming in thick and fast about this maternity scandal. So, a worst maternity scandal in the NHS until the next one. That's reality. Until the next one at Nottingham University NHS Trust. I want to know, do you blame the staff themselves? Do you blame bosses of the NHS Hospital Trust itself, or the structure of the NHS itself? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. TalkSport have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:31 is the time. In a couple of moments we are going to be talking to a senior maternity lawyer who's been representing some of the families hit by this horrific scandal at the latest NHS hospital, to be hit by a horrific scandal in terms of the maternity care. But I'm asking your thoughts on who you blame. Let's talk to Peter, who's in Oxfordshire. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. Peter, thank you for joining us. What do you want to say?
Oh, good morning, Julia. I have a daughter with your name, and she is, like you, intelligent and good-looking.
Okay. You can come again, Peter. I don't get this at home. Anyway, I'm not sure what your wife's going to think about it, but anyway, Peter, what do you want to say about the story?
Well, my view is, as a retired dentist,
Yeah.
That the NHS is a dictatorship. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
There is no competition whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
not if you've not got any money.
Yes, trying to complain, you are shuffled from one department to another.
Yeah.
You will get nowhere.
Yeah.
I can go back over 50 years when my first daughter was expected, and I came home one evening, and I found my wife upstairs on the bed crying. She said she'd been to the hospital, and she was told that it was a Friday. She had to go into the hospital and have the baby induced. I rang the hospital and I told them that there was nothing wrong. Induction was not necessary.
Induction is very painful for women as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. And I said that the child was not to be induced without the express permission of either the mother or myself. When I went to the hospital in the evening, I found that she was strung up like a chicken. They'd induced it.
Wow.
It was a total disaster. She left the hospital walking like a crab. She said, I can't understand why I'm walking like this.
And they messed up. But also, presumably, was it because it's a Friday, we want to get it over and done with, not over the weekend?
Yes, exactly. Well, she came home and she said, I'll have to go to bed. The next morning I went to the bedroom and I could smell an infection.
Yeah, I mean, you're medically trained, you can tell,
yes,
yeah.
That's right. And I rang the GP. The GP refused to come out. He sent an incompetent nurse who didn't examine her, and I told her that there was an infection, and she said, no, there's nothing wrong. So I was feeding her with antibiotics, every antibiotic under the sun. I could not make out what was wrong. I rang the doctor again, and I threatened him. I said, if you don't come, I'm going to report you.
Yeah.
He then came. He was totally incompetent. He didn't examine my wife, even though I told him I thought there was an infection. And she was in bed for 4 weeks.
Gosh, that's awful. And that was because of their incompetence and they wouldn't deal with it. So basically, when things go wrong, they won't deal with it and they just put their heads in the sand. Look, Peter, I'm going to have to go. I've got to get to a break. I'm so sorry. And I think there are so many people with stories like that to tell. I really do. I want to get to Neil, but Neil, I'm going to come back to you in the next hour. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to take a quick break, and up next we're going to talk to maternity lawyer Holly Cosutta. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:36 is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Right now, let's talk about, well, more about this horrific, and again, just the latest horrific case of a major NHS scandal, which has left some 520 women and babies with long-term damage. And extraordinarily, I mean, 6 mums dead, many babies, newborns dying, and stillbirths as well. And it's happening happening over years and years, and a hospital trust simply doing nothing to stop it. Let's talk about this with Holly Kasuta. She's a maternity lawyer. She's also a senior associate at Slater and Gordon, who've been acting for families affected by maternity negligence. Holly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Julia.
It is absolutely, I think, incomprehensible to most of us that anyone working in, any profession, let alone one of the caring professions, would have a baby die or be severely damaged, or a mother die when in a maternity unit, and not think, OK, what the hell happened there? What can we do to stop it from ever happening again? Why is the culture in the NHS, as outlined by Donna Ockenden in her report into this hospital, why is the attitude, as she said, so toxic that actually the urge is to cover up rather than to prevent the loss of life?
Yes, Julia. It's absolutely shocking and really harrowing to read Donna Ockenden's report. It just beggars belief, the depth of the terrible stories. There are stories of patients have used the words like brutal, traumatic, staff screaming at patients. It's just absolutely harrowing, and that's just from me reading it. I cannot imagine what the families have been through. I think I wanted to just pay tribute really to the families, because they have been so affected, obviously, by this dangerously poor care in Nottingham. They've not only suffered, serious injuries or tragically death, but also then their trauma has been compounded by staff, lying to them, blaming them, ignoring them, and they weren't able to get answers as to what's happened, and they deserve that.
But this happens again and again and again. I've been around a long time. I've covered so many different scandals, so many different hospitals, and we talk to the people about it. That scandals happen. Everyone's aware of it. There are whistleblowers. They get punished. There's a cover-up. It goes on for years. Eventually, there's a sort of a head of steam that finally blows. It gets into the media. There's pressure on the politicians. There's pressure on the trust. They have a review. It takes a few years. They expose everything going on. All the people who were in charge at the time, they've already long gone somewhere else. Nice promotion, nice payoff. And then they say, this needs to happen and this needs to stop and it's all going to change. And everyone says lessons will be learned. And then we wait for the next report into the next scandal, which is already brewing. Right now, there'll be scandals similar to this going on in, 6 or 7 different NHS trusts. We just don't know about them yet publicly. What can we do to stop it from happening? There are going to be mistakes. There are going to be staff who are incompetent. There are going to be people who make tragic decisions that go horribly wrong. Birth is very very difficult. It's a dangerous thing to go through. What can we do to stop it from becoming sort of almost systemic that things go wrong?
Yeah, it's absolutely got to stop. You're right. We have had quite a few of similar reports, investigations into many other maternity services across the country: East Kent, Morecambe Bay, Shrewsbury and Telford, to name a few. There's also ongoing investigations in Sussex and Leeds. Yeah. It's not just Nottingham. I have been doing this work, acting on behalf of families who have tragically come to harm in NHS maternity services for over 20 years. And these, sadly, these stories are not new. We see themes. I see themes in my work, over the years. Not enough staff, inadequate training, mothers not being listened to. Time and time again, it's always the same. Yeah. And it's really got to stop, as you say. I'm hoping, one has to be hopeful, but I'm hoping, because this was such a huge review, over 2,500 families were interviewed, 850 current and former staff were interviewed.
A lot of the senior executives, they refused to take part.
Yes, that was something I wanted to mention as well, because I'm absolutely appalled. I think it was about 53% of the senior managers at the trust just refused to engage in the investigation.
Is that current managers or managers at the time when these particular cases?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Because I know I had an interview with the chief executive of the hospital just now, and he was saying, he took part and he encouraged people to take part. But he's like, there shouldn't be an option. Of course you have to take part. That's like not turning up, to an HR or something. You haven't got a choice. You turn up, or you consider yourself sacked on the spot.
Absolutely. And I think it's just an appalling situation that they are allowed to just, turn a blind eye in the first instance and then not to engage in any reviews. I think, obviously healthcare workers do have a duty of candour to be open and frank and tell the truth, but there's obviously not a specific regulation or law that says that they have to engage. Yes, that is coming in apparently.
I have to say I'm not as optimistic as you are in terms of hoping this will change things. I don't think it will. I think there is such a culture, and again, there'll be, as individual incompetence. There'll also be, managers who problem. I do think there is an issue. I mean, it's outside of your remit, in terms of the structure of the NHS and the deification of the NHS, where sort of like everyone wants to protect the institution at all costs. But I think a lot of it is a lot of people covering their own backs now. Where we've got a culture in, say, the airline industry. Now, it's not always the case, but it has been the case for many, many years. This idea that basically if there's one airline has a problem, has a crash, the investigations, everyone needs to know, everyone needs to be honest. You give full information because, it's in everyone's interest that we find out what the problem is to prevent it happening on other airlines, to keep people flying, keep the profits, make it carrying it on functioning. There is a culture within the airline industry, actually, when there is an accident, of people speaking up, of whistleblowing, and it's been very protected. Now, there may be flaws in that. It may not happen everywhere all the time, but that's more of a culture of that as a good thing. Speaking up, there's a problem here. That's a good thing. It's almost like it's the opposite in the NHS. Do we need to sort of have a complete change in the culture where actually you're rewarded for speaking up and saying there's a problem, as opposed to, as we know, again and again and again with whistleblowers, actually you're punished?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely what it needs, a total overhaul. And, as I mentioned, this isn't just Nottingham. This is happening all over the country. A light is being shone in Nottingham at the moment. But, if this were to happen, such a widespread investigation with such a huge scope, were to happen in every trust or the ones where, complaints have been made about maternity services, then I'm sure similar sorts of stories will come forward and, it will be seen then that just how widespread this problem is. It does need a total overhaul. There are, as I understand it, things that the government are bringing in. There has been a thing called Martha's Rule. I don't know if you've heard about that, but that's being rolled. Well, it has been rolled out already, but as I understand it, not everywhere.
That's basically your right to a second opinion, basically, and any member of staff or the patient or their family can say, we need a second opinion. We don't think you're making the right decision if it's, life-changing.
Exactly, yeah.
If there isn't a moral case for this, and I can't see how, if you work in supposedly a caring profession, you wouldn't think there was a moral case for saving as many babies and mothers as possible. It's almost unfathomable, as we were saying, but that people wouldn't want to do that. But isn't there even a monetary case for this for NHS Trust? Because currently the NHS pays out billions in compensation to families for not just the deaths of patients, particularly babies, but also damage to babies during birth, where they're left with long-term damage, long-term care needs. And this can be millions and millions in some cases if they're going to need care throughout their entire lives. And that actually, paying for the extra staff, paying for the extra training now would actually, save them money, and they could actually, and my guest in the studio, Philip Ingram, was talking to a consultant saying, persuading people that actually, if you talk to your insurance company, if you can save even some of these babies from being damaged or killed, the money you'll save is worth the extra investment. I mean, even if we could try and persuade them on that basis, it would be worthwhile, surely.
Absolutely, you would think so, wouldn't you?
You'd think you would.
I've been working for families trying to get justice for their children and for themselves for over 20 years, and sadly nothing changes. And when I first started out in the job, I was really hopeful that things would change, because the NHS would see the sense in what you're saying, that it would save them money in the long run if they just weren't negligent in the first place. But it's just, I don't know, I'm not a privy to the structures within the NHS and how that all works, but something does need to change.
Absolutely.
So that they're able to save money where they can and just put the care in in place that's needed.
Yeah, again, if they're not going to take the moral case, which clearly they're not, then let's try another strand. Just finally, Holly, you said you've been doing this for 20 years, so you're a hard-bitten lawyer, you're fighting for these families. But the first time you meet these families, you've got a grieving mum and dad. I lost 4 babies to miscarriage, and I've had friends who've lost babies in very late pregnancy. Nothing can... my husband always said, we were lucky we didn't lose a baby, further on or at birth. And I've seen what that does to people. It's the worst thing in the world to lose a child. And you've got these grieving families coming in, absolutely devastated, who feel that they've not been listened to. They feel that not only has their child died, but their child didn't need to die. And I can't imagine how painful that would be. Well, what's it like hearing... They sit down in your office and they tell you the story, and it's their individual story, their individual tragedy, and you're thinking, I've heard this 50 times already and it's still happening. What does that feel like?
I mean, it's absolutely tragic and heartbreaking. Each family has a different story, of course, different circumstances, different people, but there is a theme or themes running through, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah. And, I'm there to support them through the journey if they wanted to investigate what went wrong. And I do that, I sort of approach it with a holistic view and try to support the family in any way I can. Yes, it's just, we just want better healthcare, and I don't think that's too much to ask.
You nailed it. Holly Kasuta, maternity lawyer, senior associate at Slater & Gordon, representing families affected by maternity negligence. Thank you so much for joining us. Philip Ingram, response?
Until you get personal accountability, then nothing is going to change. And that personal accountability should go right to the very top. And right at the very top, you've got the Secretary of State.
Chief Executive of the hospital.
You've got Chief Executive, but if the Chief Executive's hands are being tied because of wider government policy, then start with the Secretary of State for Health. So if the police come in and arrest Secretary of State for Health, take them away, I think things might then change.
Let's focus minds, shall we? 11:48 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking about the latest law and order stories with David Shipley. This is Talk.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. TalkSport have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:51 is the time. Let's talk to David Shipley now. He's an investigative journalist, former prisoner himself, gives him a unique insight on a lot of these police and crime stories we want to talk about. Very good morning to you, David.
Morning.
Thank you for joining us. We were talking a bit earlier about this as well. Latest revelations from body cam footage and audio from the police who came to not the rescue, very much not the rescue of Henry Novak last December when he was murdered by Reframing. And of course, was telling the police he'd been stabbed and he couldn't breathe, and they didn't believe him. I don't think you have, mate. It turns out, according to this audio, they took 8 minutes from arrival, despite being told by him immediately, I've been stabbed. 8 minutes to find that stab wound. It's absolutely harrowing to read. The footage we saw previously was awful, but an 8 minute wait to actually tear off the clothes and find a stab wound is quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, it's even worse than that, isn't it? Because actually it seemed they were giving CPR, so chest compressions.
Yeah. Onto the stab wound.
On a stab wound.
But according to the female officer, it was OK, carry on, because he's not bleeding out. Because he was bleeding inside his body. Again, total abject lack of training.
Yeah, I think they had lots of training, didn't they? They had lots of training on anti-racism. They had lots of training, which meant that when they arrived, they were primed by Vikram Digwar's lies to treat him as the victim and treat the 18-year-old boy bleeding out as if he was the criminal. That's why we see in the video, they dragged him out. They pulled his arms behind his back to handcuff him. Yeah. And I think that there was lots of training at play there. It's just not training that made people safe.
That's the thing. I think that story is just never going to go away. And all these bits of information, this audio, and these are dripping out. And again, if family hadn't insisted on that being released, that footage of the police and I don't think you have made response, I just don't think we would even know much about this case, and it wouldn't have had prompted the outcry that it has had. And I think it's absolutely vital we do have it. Now, another big story, of course, which we've had a big outcry. This is well known since 2011, 2012, when the Times, former crime investigator, he publicised this. Lots of MPs speaking out about it, but it was Elon Musk who really lit the Dutch paper on the grooming gangs scandal and the need for an inquiry to not just ensure prosecutions of more of the men who carried out the gang rape of working class girls for many decades, but also the prosecution and the information about why it was all covered up, why there weren't prosecutions, why nothing happened. Now, it took till a year ago for the Prime Minister, still in job, annoyingly, for Keir Starmer to be dragged kicking and screaming to announcing a national public inquiry. They didn't even start work until March. But we found out yesterday that the £65 million investigation inquiry is going to look at some specific areas as part of its wider inquiry, including Oldham, Bradford and Keighley. They're going to be the first areas, and interestingly London. And the interesting thing about this, of course, is that we've always been told by the London Mayor Sadiq Khan it's not been a problem here.
Well, indeed. I think it was last year, wasn't it? Sadiq Khan was sort of pretending not to understand what people meant by grooming gangs, in a way that he obviously thought was quite clever.
Third set of questions in the GLA.
Pretending he thought it was drug gang grooming of people to work in.
That was insulting, wasn't it? That was literally spitting in the faces of the victims.
And I think the reality is going to win out, and justice is going to come for as a result of this inquiry. And
do you think it is?
Criminal investigations.
Do you actually believe that? I think we'll know. I think we'll know more. I wonder if we'll know much more, because we know an awful lot in terms of the failures of the police, failures of councils, and in fact the deliberate covering up in many of those cases of these grooming gangs. But because of concerns about community cohesion, but do you think there will be any extra justice delivered? Do you think any of the people who didn't act will be prosecuted?
I think it might not be under this government or this parliament, but I think there is going to come a time quite soon where there will need to be special prosecutions for the public servants and politicians who have covered up and been complicit in the rape gangs. And that may mean at the top end prescriptions and for the most egregious offenders. Others should be prosecuted for misconduct in public office. But there has to be justice.
There really does, doesn't there? I mean, again, and this is often talked about as something that happened in the past, but we know it's still ongoing, and we're still seeing cases right now coming to court where we've got grooming gangs. And again, I'm sorry, sorry, but you just have to look at the pictures of all the mugshots, and we are looking at the vast majority of them being Muslim Pakistani men from the Kashmiri area, heritage-wise, or actually immigrant, who are committing these crimes. It's a particular modus operandi for this particular kind of paedophile abuse. And they're getting, we're told, a grooming gang gets 120 years. Well, between them, I mean, these are men who brutally gang raped and beaten and drugged and threatened young girls, kids, for years on end. And they're serving, they're being sentenced to 12 years. They don't serve 12 years. And it frustrates me. It's not like in America where, right, for each one of those rapes, you're going to get 12 years or whatever it is, and it's going to be served consecutively. It's always concurrent. So you may as, if you're going to get done for one rape, you may as well commit 1,000, mayn't you? I mean, we've got to sort that out in this country. Plus if you're sentenced to 12 years, you serve 12 years.
Yes, and I think frankly, my view on this is we should bring back capital punishment for these sorts of crimes. I think the rape of a child cannot be allowed to stand, and a civilised country would find men like this guilty and hang them within a couple of weeks of conviction.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've always been opposed to the death penalty, but I've got to be honest with you, again, like that awful case of the two adopted dads and the baby, I find it difficult to feel strongly about my objections to the death penalty in these scenarios. Just one final story. Labour has been accused of decriminalising benefit fraud. Prosecutions collapsed, not just during COVID, everything collapsed during COVID, but in the wake of COVID. Prosecutions have plummeted. Benefit cheats are increasingly being allowed to cut deals to avoid court action. What the hell is that about? The number of alleged fraudsters facing criminal proceedings has fallen by more than 90% since 2017. Down to just from 4,400 to just 385 last year. Massive explosion in welfare claims. A lot of them, frankly, who are we kidding, completely spurious, anxiety, depression, whatever. And massive explosion, and yet we're led to believe that fraud has gone down. This is an absolute joke, isn't it?
It is, and actually it's not just with that sort of benefit. So the National Audit Office recently released a report where they've been looking at the rate of child benefit fraud. And it seemed that quite a lot of people will apply for child benefit and then leave the country and just let the claim keep on running. So they're trying now to sort of tie in Home Office data to try and track who's left the country so they stop getting paid their child benefit, because that is fraudulent to keep taking those circumstances.
And that's on a grand scale as well.
I'm sure it is, because there are very few controls. We've generally relied on an assumption that there's a fairly low rate of fraud and no real attempt to investigate it or look into it. And I think the deals you mentioned are really create quite bad incentives, because the deals say you can essentially pay back half of of what you've been overpaid, what you've taken illegally,
which is outrageous. I mean,
what's the incentive?
It should be 10 times that. I mean, it's stealing from. It's literally stealing out of my audience and my pockets, or in your pockets. But this is the thing. I know someone who works in a benefit fraud investigation unit, and it's just outrageous what goes on. But the extraordinary thing is we're constantly told by politicians, there isn't a lot of benefit fraud. Well, if you don't prosecute people, then you won't find any benefit fraud, will you? So you don't have to worry about it.
And there's not much systematic investigating, right? So they'll say there's no evidence of this. It's like, yes, because you haven't looked. In the same way, there's no evidence of grooming gangs in London, because no one's ever looked and investigated.
Absolutely.
And it's a very dishonest way of dismissing concerns to say, there's no
absolutely problem. Yeah, but it'll carry on, and it's all our money. Don't worry about it. We haven't got any money for more nurses in the NHS, but we'll do this. David Shipley, always so good to talk to you. Investigative journalist David Shipley. Up next, latest headlines. Then we're going to be talking to Bernie Spofforth. She's the author of a brand new book, War to Win Back Your World. You don't want to miss that. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. It's 2 minutes past midday, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, if you're watching on YouTube or your connected device, I very much appreciate your company. Lots and lots to talk about. Coming up in just a few moments, I'm going to be joined by the brilliant Bernie Spofforth. She's talking about her brand new book. You don't want to miss that. Plus, it's been revealed that more than 50,000 illegal migrants and foreign criminals have gone missing in the UK after absconding. I know. I'm as surprised as you are about that. Meanwhile, more than 60,000 migrants have no right to be in the country, a damning leaked government report reveals. The only thing that I would question about that is I mean, add a 0 or 2, give me a break. Plus, we're going to be talking about a brilliant story. The Danish government is planning to ban the Islamic call to prayer across Denmark. The country's immigration minister claims parts of the nation risk sounding like a suburb of Islamabad. Ooh, should we do that here? That could be good fun, couldn't it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Lots of your calls still coming in. Do keep them coming in, particularly about this damning report into Britain's worst maternity scandal. Worst so far. Don't worry, there'll be more coming along, which has exposed deadly failings in the NHS yet again. But who do you blame? Is it the individual staff? Is it the managers? Or is it the structure of the NHS? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text us the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate, as you know, all together now. Text cost one standard network rate message. Right, joining me in the studio right now, of course, still with us throughout the show, Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. He's got no truck with any of you moaning about the weather. Good afternoon to you once again.
Good afternoon to you.
The message today has been loud and clearly heard. Man up.
Bit chilly.
Bit chilly. Yeah, he thinks it's cold. I'm going to put that aircon off again if you don't stop. Also joining us, I'm so delighted to say, someone I met through the joys of X, or Twitter as it was. She is Bernie Spofforth, and you may remember her. She was in the news rather a lot sometime around the summer of 2024 in the wake, of course, the horrific Southport killing. She was arrested on the 8th of August 2024 by Cheshire Police over a social media post where she was accused of spreading misinformation about the Southport attack, incorrectly naming the attacker. The fact that she had actually written at the top of this, if this is true, there will be hell to pay, didn't count with the police. But luckily, it did eventually count, and quite rightly, no charges were brought against her. Now, she was a successful businesswoman, married, children, living a normal life, had written this post, and her life changed completely. She is now the author of a brand new book called A War to Win Back Your World, because silence feels like dying. Very, very good afternoon to you, Bernie.
Nice to be here.
Really great to get you in the studio. We normally meet up over a drink, it's got to be honest, but let's be honest about that, folks. But I want to talk to you about this book. I mean, first of all, what made you write this book, and how significant was your arrest? Because the first chapter of this book is not a memoir, it's something like, but your first chapter is all about you being this ordinary person who suddenly finds themselves locked in a police cell. Is that the catalyst for this book?
Not really. The catalyst for the book was that, of course, when you've been arrested and you're too frightened to leave your house, you have a lot more time on your hands. And I'm a digger, I'm a researcher. I like to make sense of things around me. And so I had a lot more time. And so I started to pull together the information that I already had.
And you were already, you were someone who was campaigning against lockdown. I think that's how we'd first come across each other. And over, various aspects of censorship and things like that. And your book, and it's interesting, the two parts of the title, A War to Win Back Your World. What is the war that we need to fight? And also, you say, because silence feels like dying, why does being silent feel like dying? Because a lot of people say, well, what do you mean by that, Bernie?
I mean that if we don't stick up for ourselves and if we don't stick up for the democracy that I think is slipping away from us, we will become silent. And when you become silent, you can't fight back against anything, can you? And your question was, a war to win back what? Well, I think, as I've evidenced through much of that book, direct or representative democracy is slipping away from us. It's slipping away.
And not just in Britain.
No, in 193 countries, to be precise. And it's slipping away because legislators are allowing more and more of our legislation to be filled in through unelected quangos. And they're taking their lead from unelected and unaccountable global institutions and the ecosystem that works around them. And it's getting further and further away from us.
I mean, this all ties in with a lot of the things we talk about on this show. One of the reasons I'm a Brexiteer, I don't want unelected, unaccountable technocrats in Brussels to decide laws in my country. I want politicians who I've had a chance to elect or not vote for. But either way, majority of my fellow citizens have elected. Battling against COVID, the World Health Organization, and this body, the United Nations. A lot of things they've done, I would say, over issues like Israel as well, climate change policy and the like. There are an awful lot of things that a lot of people who are not conspiracy theorists. I've never been a conspiracy theorist, and I had a few battles and questions. Is this a conspiracy theory or not? There are an awful lot of things that are happening, that are happening across lots of other countries at the same time, being pushed by global bodies, where an awful lot of the funding comes from either our own taxes, curiously, and or billionaires who've got a particular political agenda, and that is a big issue. And they're driving an agenda. Now, there's a lot of talk about, the globalist agenda, that they're trying to take control of us. A lot of people listening will go, oh, come on, Bernie, you've just gone down a dark rabbit hole. This is just a conspiracy theory. Why do you believe it isn't that?
It isn't a rabbit hole, it's mission creep. Bureaucracies love to make themselves bigger and take more and more money. And if you look at our own government, how have we got 11,000 people in the Cabinet Office? Right? 11,000 people. And I think that what happens is these things spiral out of control. And as they get larger and they become more influential, they believe that they alone are better at running our futures than we are.
And we see that in every institution. Again, the mission creep there. The key thing is, I suppose, if it's in government, civil service, we feel we have some control over it. But we've increasingly seen in recent governments that actually the civil service gets to decide things rather than us. But it goes bigger than that, doesn't it? It's the EU, World Health Organization and others. Tell me about the areas in which our lives are being decided by organisations and bodies that often we bizarrely help fund, but we have no say over.
A lot of the issues that we're facing today, we don't have much say over. And what tends to happen is these huge organisations create blueprints. So I didn't know, for example, that the UN had a habitat division, so it could decide how we were all going to live in 50 years.
But it's not about the environment, it's not about the habitat of the lesser spotted owl.
Well, not really, because the environment isn't getting any better, is it?
Well, on the contrary, it is. No, on the contrary, everyone thinks actually statistically it is. But when you say habitat, it's about how we live in our homes.
How we live in our homes.
Our local environment.
Our local environment. Net zero. And of course, the big one that they brought in that we signed up to in 2015 was Agenda 2030. That great big conspiracy theory that doesn't exist, which really does exist. And it has 17 goals in it. It is indivisible across countries. Every country has adopted it.
What is it? Explain what it is.
These are sustainable development goals that each country will live by, and they will work indivisibly from each other in every country, covering things like oceans, covering land, covering food, covering... The big one is there will be no poverty. Brilliant, great,
how are you going to do that?
Well,
to be fair, poverty is going down, but that's down to capitalism.
But it is, but there's a huge amount of money to be made in telling people what to eat and how to eat.
So again, I mean, this is sort of stuff that the Sadiq Khans and many politicians have signed up to.
Yeah.
And this is, and we're always told it's about saving the planet,
yeah,
saving the environment, blah blah blah. But actually, it's about
making money.
So a lot of conspiracy theorists would say it's about controlling us. So they're going to control where we can drive, where we can fly, how our homes are like, you know, how much money you can have. I mean, lots of controlly areas. That you're saying that's not. It's just about making money.
Well, some of it might be. Some of it might be connected to types of control. Do I think there are 5 blokes sat in a room with a cigar trying to control the world? No.
Somewhere in Switzerland.
Yeah. Do I think that there are policies in place that make very messy democracies easier to control as they get poorer, perhaps, or as energy becomes slightly harder to regulate, perhaps? Well, yes, I would say that. And you can see that anyway when you look at everything smart, when you look at some of the experiments and volunteer programmes they've carried out in other countries that say we will allow the energy company to determine how hot or how cold your house could be.
And even smart meters. I've always said to people, don't get smart meters. The whole point of a smart meter is that basically they will stop you using energy when you want to use it because they'll price you out of it, which they can only do with a smart meter. But this is the thing, isn't it? In terms of the areas where we have seen more control in recent years, our relationship with the state has changed an awful lot in terms of, we are in charge of our own lives, and we give the state, we give the government certain powers to, run civic society. And that's a very different, we rule, basically, and people are in charge. We have the ultimate say. It's very different the other way around, isn't it? If you have all these bodies that are supranational, who are outside of not just our control, but it would appear our government's controls as well. But it does seem an awful lot of our politicians, mostly around Europe, Australia's just as bad, Canada's just as bad, probably even worse. America was, under Donald Trump, is one thing he has moved away from. Signing up to this stuff, happily handing over, even, things like, in the event of a pandemic, we absolutely want the World Health Organization completely, but in hock to China, to have a say over our policies in this country, that we want the EU, because wants the EU to have a say over our energy policy and things like that. Why do you think so many politicians, who surely are in it for the power themselves, why do they want to hand over that power? Well, we don't have a choice about it, but why do they?
Often I would suspect it would be an awfully nice place to follow their career through.
It's that simple. I want a nice EU commissioner job or whatever.
Yeah.
So, OK, so not a conspiracy, but look, and it must be clear, look, you're not Miss random woman off the street who decided, I think I'll write a book. You were a very, very successful businesswoman. I mean, that arrest in 2024 absolutely kiboshed a lot of your career, didn't it?
Yeah.
You've been looking to this. I mean, the book is incredibly detailed. Everything is, you're not just making sweeping statements. Everything is absolutely detailed. Everything's got a footnote and a detail about it. And I have to say, even as a journalist covering quite a lot of these international affairs, there are a load of bodies that you mentioned that are huge funding, huge power and influence, international bodies I'd never even heard of, but they actually do have huge power. I mean, we know about the ones in our country, like, say, the Climate Change Committee, again, one of those, a quango, a particular issue with quango, who are an independent appointed body who decide effectively, have massive influence on apparently our energy policy. I didn't get a say in who these people were.
Yeah, that's the problem. Nobody is accountable. And so you can change the faces, you can change your politician, but nothing is actually going to change.
It kind of explains why people are getting so fed up with their politicians, because every time they vote differently, they don't get what they've asked for.
They don't get anything different. And I would say, because it interests me hugely, this matter of state being all over your life. If they bring in digital ID, for example, do we really think another government is going to do away with digital ID? And I argue, of course they're not. It's a fantastic tool for government. Yeah, it gives them great data on how many people use a bus route and how many people are in hospital. But those huge data centres will hold you files that will contain everything about you. During COVID, we had vaccine passports, and that was a permissive life. If you behave like this, you can do this.
You can keep your job in a care home. You can go to work.
Yeah, you can't have your hair cut, but someone can cut your hair, right?
Yeah.
And under that kind of system, the control governments would have would be enormous. So let's say Reform get into government next time. 50% of the country are absolutely up in arms because they don't want their welfare cut, they don't want to be told being anxious means they can't claim PIP, and they definitely don't want to deport millions of migrants, right? So now the protests happen the other way. We've got streets full of people, we've got perhaps violent demonstrations. Wouldn't it be excellent if reform also had a digital ID in order to quash dissent?
Governments never give away power unless forced to do so.
Exactly. And so I think that institutions writing these huge institutions, including banks, including NGOs, they know that democracy is messy. Larry Fink said it, didn't he? Larry Fink said, as bankers, we would prefer totalitarianism. Yeah. It's much easier to manage.
It's much easier to deal with, yeah. And look, and we can see, even when it comes to things like, China spending money on defence. Okay, actually, they're not defending themselves. They want to, invade Taiwan and help other nefarious actors. But they're able to do that because they get to decide exactly what they spend on everything, and there's no one to complain. If you complain, you're in prison. If we complain, they try to put us in prison, tried to put you in prison. But again, I suppose this is about censorship, it's about digital ID, it's about control, it's about lack of democratic accountability. There is some hope near the end of the book about this. It's all laid out in detail. And some of it, you might be about farming, about, you've got into all of the different organisations where this is happening. I think it's very educational. There's a lot I didn't know, and I'm someone who's fairly up on a lot of this stuff. You've done your research, no doubt. Do you have a message of hope, or is this just a sort of dystopian, you know what, they're going to be in charge of us all, we're just going to be in the matrix, we've got no power, and which people will say then, we're into conspiracy theory territory. What hope could you give us?
I would say that there are indeed two paths. Both of them result in us getting poorer, certainly in the short term. Jobs are shrinking, we know that. We know that AI will have a huge impact on white-collar workers. Yep. And what I say in the book is, you're at a fork in the road. There are two. One, you go along with all of this, and you might be quite secure.
Have an easy life.
Safe, and that'll be OK, but you will be poorer. Or you don't go along with all of this. The people do decide, you're still going to be poorer. So, really...
People tend to go for an easy life, don't they?
People tend to go for an easy life.
People never vote to be poor.
But not for long. So I would say the optimism at the end is I'm hugely optimistic about democracy. In the end, it will work.
But belief in democracy in Britain, and particularly among young people in America, rather terrifyingly, as the leading, biggest, well, not the biggest democracy, but the one that matters the most in the world, is massively falling. They would rather have, strongman government. They see it in other countries and they say they would like it. Numerous times when we try to export democracy from the West, they vote for governments which are not ones we would like, we don't think are what we would regard as democratic nations. Is democracy on the upward slope, or is it on the downward slope?
Well, I think at the moment, through education in our schools and through SDG 4, Sustainable Development Goal 4, that they're all working with, it's all about globalism. It's all about sharing and everybody being equal, and which sounds all really great.
Sounds like socialism.
But kind of sounds a little bit like, for 20 years, the blueprint's coming down, the things we're supposed to be following are all very socialist in nature, and of course we know that they prefer to be told what to do with an enormous state. So no, I don't think this can be fixed in one electoral term. We've taken 50 years to get here, 20 years of really hard work to get here. It'll take that amount of time to get out of it. Teach your children well. Teach them to think, to learn, not to always take what's being told to them at face value.
I think a lot of us have learnt that, certainly since lockdown. I think I was much more trusting in medical advice, scientific advice, and now I just, instantly, I can always say my spidey senses go, oh, is it for my safety? Social media bans, is it for my safety? Oh, let me question that then.
And I say that in the book, where I talk about I'm not a free speech absolutist.
No.
I am an information absolutist. And that's why there's so much information in that book.
And the
that
democracy
is cited.
of information.
Absolutely.
There's so much in there, as I say, I didn't know, which I think is absolutely crucial. Let me bring in Philip Ingram listening to this. Now, you're a former senior military intelligence officer. Is this all going on, or should we be worried?
Yeah, we should be worried. the more you think about it and the more you think into it, the more you realise that there are these unelected bodies, that there is no individual that you can hold responsible for anything, that are influencing our lives more and more on a daily basis. And it reminded me...
But there are agendas out there where a lot of people and governments and government-funded organisations are signed up to.
They are signed up to,
which are not perhaps in our best individual democratic interest.
And they're not necessarily reflected in manifestos whenever we have elections and everything else. So all of this is happening, behind closed doors. And one thing that this discussion reminded me of is a line out of a Simon Garfunkel song: "Silence like a cancer grows."
Yeah.
So are the signs of silence.
Oh, absolutely. People shouldn't be silent. But I'm thinking when it comes to things like our freedom to speak, our freedom, our equality under the law, mass migration, open borders, the net zero agenda, which I think is exploding eventually, but a lot of climate hysteria, the rejoin the EU, the belief in the technocracy, digital ID, digital banking. So much of this and AI is moving in the direction of fewer and fewer people outside of our democratic accountability having control over our lives.
Which is why you're seeing what you believe is censorship of the internet. They must remove the information that they don't want you to see. So the curbs on what you can see, what is misinformation? Who decides what misinformation is? The WHO? The WHO? Do you know how many times they told us the wrong thing during COVID?
I've said I've got a better track record than them. Oh, and Chris Whitty as well. Philip Ingram?
Yeah, well, what we don't realise is that a lot of these bodies have been manipulated by state actors who want to do us harm and are using these bodies.
They want to undermine Western.
Correct.
This is a crucial thing.
That's
Russia,
really
China, and they actually want to undermine our civilization and our liberal democracy.
Look at the UN legal body that gave the unbinding ruling on Chagos. And look at how much that's impacted our government decision-making here. That's a perfect example.
I think Bernie's both pleasantly surprised and shocked that she's got them backing there. I mean, it really is a fascinating read. I wish you the very best of luck with it. Bernie Spofforth, she's the author of a book called A War to Win Back Your World Because Silence Feels Like Dying. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to go... Actually, she's very polite as well. We're going to go to a quick break, then we'll go back to your calls. 0344 499 1000. You've got to call in about Bernie's book. Give us a call as well. This is Talk.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. TalkSport have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:26 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. A lot of you getting in touch about the lead story today, as of yesterday. Around this time yesterday, we had that damning report by Donald Ockenden into Britain's worst maternity scandal. brackets so far, which has exposed deadly failings in the NHS yet again. A huge number of babies dying in birth, stillborn deaths and deaths as newborns, and 6 mums dying as well. And yet it was known for years and nothing was done. And parents had to fight so hard, as they always do, to get any justice and get any action on this. But I don't think any of us are very hopeful anything is going to change, because it never does. So who do you blame? Is it the individual staff? Is it the bosses? Not putting enough staff on, bad management? Or is it the NHS itself, the structure itself that promotes this idea that, basically, don't ever admit to anything because we're perfect. We're the worshipped NHS. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Tracy is in Staffordshire, wants to have her say. Hello, Tracy.
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
Isn't the weather lovely?
I love that. There you go. She manned up for you, Philip. Yeah. She manned up, yeah.
Yeah. Can I just say, I totally agree with Philip. Responsibility is the key.
Yep. Oh, have you gone? Tracy? Tracy, where are you? We've lost her. We'll try and get her back. We'll go to Neil in Buckinghamshire. Hello, Neil.
Hello, Julia. How you doing? All right.
Very well. I hope this call lasts longer than Tracy's.
Well, I hope to as well. Well, I'm in the air-conditioned van, so I should be OK.
Oh, is it? What temperature is it?
33.
No, in the van?
Yes.
Oh, that's not... I'd hate to tell you, I don't think your aircon's working.
Yeah, no, that's the water industry for you. They don't give us good equipment.
What do you want to say about a rather more serious topic?
Well, it's the midwives. My sister-in-law is a midwife. She's 55 years old, and when she started, there was 3 managers ahead of her. She's now top of her band, and there's 6 managers above her. That's where the problem lies with the NHS.
And what we do, I'm not sure, you need managers. There's obviously a role, you have to manage people. But nevertheless, I'm thinking more people who actually, can actually help women give birth might be more useful.
More clinical staff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You take away some of them managers, because there's about 4 levels below her as well. So it's ridiculous, and that's all through the NHS. Yeah. And that's where all the money goes. So you could have another 25 midwives if you got rid of some of them managers, even more, and you might not get the same issues that we're getting. Yeah,
I completely agree with you. And there's one thing that's very, very clear, given the stuff that's not the clinical stuff, but, and of course, there is a management aspect to, tests getting to the right place and contracts and ordering equipment and rotas, and there's obviously all of that stuff. But I do wonder a lot of the time, what are you all doing? Surely, this is, these are the people we've got hired. These are the people who can do the job. Let them do the job. I'm not sure what a manager's got to do with whether or not, I can get an X-ray, an A&E or not, other than you should all be working. But does it involve 6 layers of management? But it's interesting that we're told that there's something like 120,000 vacancies in the NHS, pretty much entirely for clinical staff. They've got no shortage of net zero officers, DEI, HR people and paper pushers, but they can't get the clinical staff, even though there are many times more that clinical staff trained in this country willing to do the work. So what the hell's going on?
Because they haven't got a degree. They call me cynical, but when I was growing up, it was a vocation. People didn't need a degree to become a nurse, which then they became midwives.
Common sense would help.
It would help, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Neil, thank you very much. You enjoy your van ride in 33-degree aircon. I'm afraid we can't get Tracy back on the line. It's just gone completely dead. Tracy, I hope you're OK. I don't know what happened then. It was just the line. Probably the heat. Who are we kidding? But I hope you're OK. Let's go to Tristan, who's in Bedford. Hello, Tristan.
Hi, Julia. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Say.
I wanted to talk about the NHS. In my experience, I suffer from Crohn's. Yeah. And in my experience, it's a postcode lottery system. But on top of that, you need to know about your illness. If I didn't know about my Crohn's and gastroenterology, I don't think I'd be here.
You have to look it up now. I mean, look, we've had, we've got the NHS website. We've got. It's worth knowing some things, although not. I don't like it when people go, I'll get my health advice from TikTok. No, go to a reputable medical body and get it there. But when you say postcode lottery, did you move home and then found that the treatment was completely different and the help was different?
from when I was first diagnosed at the age of 14, everything was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But then when in my local hospital in Luton, I had an operation, which was fine, but then it turned out that I had a blockage. But they never told me I had a blockage. I found that out a couple of years later.
Brilliant.
So when my stomach was also almost bursting, and also when it was going to have a hematoma and have internal bleeding, I was told that I had a severe stomach blockage, so I was rushed into A&E. At that time, they told me that I might have to have part of my stomach and part of my bowel out.
Oh, my goodness. But no one had even bothered telling you. Like, you wasn't really relevant. You were just the patient. You didn't need... information was on a need-to-know basis.
No,
Can I ask you, what do you think we could do that would change? What could a politician, what could the new health secretary, and I don't think he'd do anything, what could he do to change things?
There needs to be, people need to actually know what they're talking about. I deal with locums when I have issues with my Crohn's. I'm having an issue at the moment, and I've had to explain to them the medication I need, why I need that medication. He actually spelt Crohn's wrong when he was sending the letter to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, and if I didn't know about Crohn's or gastroenterology, the thing is, people put too much trust in the NHS.
I think that's it.
If you don't question things, well, right beside you, what's good?
Well, that's Martha's rule, getting a second opinion. Really appreciate that call. Thank you, Tristan. Good luck with your healthcare there. Some of the messages coming in, I asked, do you blame the staff, bosses or the NHS? Cheryl says all of the above. Josh says, not a shock, this report, considering how the demographics of the NHS has changed. Nurses outright refuse to treat patients because of their religion or race. I mean, we literally have had that, because of anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish feeling. Alison says understaffing is a huge problem. Yeah, as has just been pointed out by Neil, understaffing by which staff. Rose says, just know the solution will be to employ more middle managers and put more systems and processes in place requiring more administrative staff. It's the public sector's answers to every failing. None of it works. Ray says the nasty health service needs privatisation. Tim says the bosses are paid too much and there are too many of them. Get money back to frontline staff. Noreen says I blame all of them, each one covered up for each other. Gavin says it's usually the higher-ups in the chain of command covering up and blaming people below. There's no way to challenge or hold management to account. Staff standards, says Dan, have dropped. Mark says the NHS is the warning against government-run healthcare. It's expensive, inefficient and employs some of the worst people on the planet. And Claire says the whole organisation is broken. Some of the people working there have an awful attitude. It's the lack of communication that astounds me. Let's take a quick break and then we'll come back. More from Philip Ingram and more from Danny Shaw, Home Affairs commentator, on the latest, well, some quite shocking migration figures that have come out today. Plus, should we follow Denmark in banning the Islamic call to prayer? That's what Denmark's doing. We'll talk about that in the next half hour. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Sorry, good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. By the way, we were talking about the heatwave a little bit earlier. Of course we were, but not being hysterical about it. We're not all going to die. But this will not surprise you. South East Water this morning has announced an emergency hosepipe ban imposed as the heatwave grips the country. Of course they have it across Kent. So well done. Good luck, everyone in Kent. But you're no longer allowed to look after your lawns. So don't worry about that lawn that you've worried about for years. We put a new lawn in a few years ago. Get the hose pipe on it. No, not allowed to. It's illegal because we live in a country that doesn't have enough water. it rains most of the year, we're surrounded by water, we don't have enough water because it's been a bit hot. We are not a functioning, serious country. I think we can all agree on that. Right now, let's talk about something else we're definitely not functioning on, and that is our borders. Let's talk to Home Affairs commentator Danny Shaw about some stats that have come out today. A very good morning. I keep saying morning. Good afternoon to you, Danny.
Afternoon, Julia. It is hot, but I agree with you. We've all become really soft, haven't we? Get people in school, open some windows, give them some water. Don't make them do PE in the baking sun, but for goodness sake, they should be in school, really, shouldn't they?
Oh, I'm loving that. He's gone straight for it. I mean, look, you're with Philip Ingram. Man up, everybody. Get on with it. Let's talk about, I'm dread to think with this heat and this weather, whether or not how many illegal boat migrants we're going to get this week. I haven't seen any figures on that, but there have been 2 new sets of figures that have come out, 2 different papers today. More than 60,000 migrants have no right to be in Britain, according to a new leaked government report. This is from Immigration Enforcement. They've identified over 62,000, they say, possible overstayers as of last July. We've also got some new internal Home Office figures showing that 50,000 illegal migrants, including 1,200 foreign national offenders, have been recorded as absconders on government systems. The data was obtained by the independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration. Dates from December 2024 shows there were more missing illegal migrants than asylum seekers currently awaiting an initial decision by the Home Office. As of March, over 48,000 migrants awaiting an asylum decision. This also includes people refused asylum who've then absconded. We haven't got a clue who's here. We haven't got a clue who's gone. And we haven't got a clue where the people who aren't supposed to be here are. Should we be worried, Danny?
Well, I think we should be worried about this. I think these 2 figures, 50,000, 62,000, they may be actually part of the same pool of numbers. Yeah. But whatever the figures, it is true that there are thousands of people that the authorities have lost track of, that they've absconded. They're not keeping in touch with the immigration authorities, and we don't know if they've left the country or if they've just sort of gone into hiding, as it were, and working in the black economy, which is quite likely what's happening. This is a fault. As a former Labour advisor, you might say we would say that, wouldn't he? But I do think we have to lay this at the door of the previous government. This isn't something that Labour has suddenly done since it took over 2 years ago. It was a problem that's building, particularly, I would argue, because all of the focus in the Home Office Immigration Department went on the Rwanda scheme, and they stopped the focus so much on immigration enforcement and tracking and surveillance of people who are here. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not Labour's problem now, because it absolutely is. And they say they are going to double the budget for immigration enforcement over the next 3 years and increase resources, increasing staffing by 60%. So that will help. But what needs to happen is for decisions to be made much more quickly and for action to be taken straight away, for particularly for people who come here illegally, who are demonstrably have come here illegally on the boat routes. Their cases, in my view, should be prioritised for removal.
The trouble is, as soon as they know they're going to be removed, they'll disappear from their asylum hotels or their HMOs, their houses of multiple occupancy, so they can carry on working in the black market. We've seen all that exposed. And again, I'm pretty sure the last time I had my car washed, I'm pretty sure none of them were in the country legally. And you think, doing this really openly on a high street, apparently police, no one seems to be remotely bothered. But this is the thing, when we queue up at airports, and we've got all this fuss about getting into Europe this summer, and everyone's going to be moaning about, because you've got a British passport, you have to queue for 2 hours, and the people from the EU are just waltzing straight in. But when we come in and out of our own country, we often have to queue to show our passport. We live in this country. We need to show we've left the country. We show when we come back into the country. You might get questioned by a customs officer about where you come from. You might just go to the electronic gate. But there's a record of us going in and out of the country. Well, how is it that we don't know who is in the country and who isn't? Why is there not an immediate thing where someone has come in from, Spain, they're allowed to stay here 6 months, and on 6 months or one day, does the computer, maybe AI could do this, go, oh, hello, Juan has not left the country yet. We've got no record of him leaving the country. Where is he? Let's track him down.
Well, that does happen in some cases, and there is particularly a focus on foreign national offenders, quite rightly, because they're people who've been convicted of crimes and should be deported.
But they're supposed to be deported the day they leave prison.
The problem, Julia, is I just think the numbers are too big for the immigration authorities. So your example of someone who comes here, they've got a visa, they overstay their visa, even if the computer goes ping and says this person needs to be found because they've overstayed their visa. I mean, they could be anywhere, and particularly if they're not paying their taxes and they're not on the sort of the official system, it's very difficult to find them. And then you've got there are thousands of other people in that position.
They're using their credit cards. They're probably very easy to find, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you can. If you want to find someone, you can find someone. When the resources are put there, the problem is the numbers are so big. You talk 50,000, 60,000. The numbers are so big that they are too big for the number of people in immigration enforcement, which is why an uptick in resources there will help. But for me, the system needs to start at the beginning. When people come here, claim asylum, once they're refused, it's got to be immediate, it's got to be quick, because you can detain people if there's a prospect of removing them.
Well, exactly. But we did have those problems with those detention camps that, people were being held for ages and ages because of appeal after appeal after appeal. And then it was inhumane, it wasn't reasonable, it was a breach of human rights to keep people, particularly families, in these camps, and therefore people were out and about in local communities. But it's fascinating that, the problem is something that we can't deal with because it's so huge. That's kind of, that's the problem, isn't it? It's on such a grand scale. And the bigger the scale and the less we're able to deal with it, the bigger the scale will be, because word goes around, you just turn up, it's fine, you do your student visa, you get your work visa, you overstay. Or, as we've discovered from many countries, it's happening from the Indian subcontinent a lot, you get a visa to come and work or be a student, and then about 2 months before your visa is up, you go, oh, it turns out I need to claim asylum.
You have to, but because it's a huge problem, it doesn't mean that you can't take incremental steps to try and tackle it. If you can get that 50,000 number down to 45,000 and then 40,000, then it becomes more manageable. And so that, I think, is all that the government can do, rather than sort of throwing our hands in the air and saying, well, it's 50,000, can't do anything about it. Incremental steps to try and tackle it.
Anything's better than nothing. That said, I mean, most people, I'm sure would agree, would be more concerned, as you mentioned, about people who are clearly, blatantly, obviously illegal migrants who've arrived through a legal route, and who can be and should be deported automatically at that point, in my view, and foreign criminals. But again, as I just mentioned, if you commit a criminal offence, you're supposed to be deported at the end of your sentence. But often we find they're still on the streets years later.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some agreements to try and facilitate returns of foreign prisoners, and we should monitor those figures very, very carefully, because I think the legislation is now in place, or about to be in place, to try and improve that and get those numbers up. They are the absolute category of people that should not be in the country at all.
Absolutely.
When you've committed offences.
Absolutely. Can I ask you about another story? I didn't warn you about this, but I'm sure you'll be able to comment on it. We had the sentencing of Peter Murrell, Nicola Sturgeon's ex, and of course a very, very senior figure in the Scottish National Party when she was leader of not just the party but also First Minister of Scotland. He's been sentenced to over 5 years behind bars for embezzling £400,000 of SNP funds donated by the public. She has never been charged. She was questioned, but she's not been charged. Lots of pressure on her now to release the police statement, the written statement that she gave to police after being accused of failing to cooperate with their investigation. She's always said that she did cooperate fully. She had no idea, even though a number of the items that were purchased using that money were incredibly expensive. They were in her home. A Jaguar, over 80 grand, parked on her own driveway, very expensive gifts. A mother-in-law with a clearly visible at the time from police photographs with a £120,000 camper van parked on her driveway. We know she visited her mother-in-law. She said she couldn't see the camper van. It must have been round the back, but no, it was parked on the driveway. Questions are still being asked about how she did also not face charges for this embezzlement and how she could possibly not have known. Do you think that's going to go anywhere? And should she release that police statement?
Well, if it helps to clear up some of those questions, then I would advise her to release the police statement if that's going to help. I mean, she has given some interviews where she's explained it. Clearly, there are some people that don't believe what she said. And having said that, Julia, I've covered crime for many, many years, and it is true to say that there are some people who carry out crimes and you have absolutely no idea what's going on. People who've lived with other people who've carried out the most awful murders and didn't have a clue.
Yeah, but the dead body wasn't parked on the front of your house.
No, it is possible. I mean, all we can do at the moment, I think, is accept that the police have done their job and they've looked at it and they've decided that she shouldn't be prosecuted. Okay. But if she can give more light on the decision making and so on by releasing statements or other evidence, then she should do it.
If it's in her interest, I think that tells us why we won't see it. Always good to talk to you. Thank you so much, Danny Shaw, Home Affairs commentator there. Philip Ingram, your response to any or all of that?
Well, it's those that overstay their visas and bits and pieces. We should have a US Marshal type organisation that as soon as
ICE.
That goes out and finds people, and then whenever they find them, they should be fined. They then fined, and then so you take the money off them, or any assets that they've got, and then they're deported with no right to return. And you turn around to every. No appeal whatsoever.
You can appeal. You can appeal when you're back in your own country.
And you then make that very clear to everyone that's coming in on a legitimate visa that if you overstay, that is what is going to happen to you. All of a sudden, lots of people voluntarily go out because they'll want to come back in again.
This is my thing about the plans that Reform have about deportations. That actually, when life becomes a little bit less comfortable, that it will change. Anyway, coming up, we are going to be talking to Dr. Taj Huggie. I'm very excited to talk to him about Denmark wanting to ban the Islamic call to prayer across the country. We'll talk about that up next. First, though, I must remind you that TalkSport, our friends down the corridor, they have teamed up with Meantime to create a lager in time for the World Cup. Of course they have. It's called So Good Lager, which will be poured from all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. So whether you're watching the action this summer, settling in for an afternoon with your friends, make sure you check out talksport.com/so good to find your nearest pub. So Good is 18 plus, of course. Please drink responsibly. And, of course, you also know that the 26th World Cup, having kicked off here, we are celebrating it in style. That's why we are giving you the chance to boost your bank balance with a massive £26,000 in tax-free cash for a summer you won't forget. Here's how to enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 8338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 8338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. TalkSport have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:50 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me, and I'm delighted to be joined now by Dr. Taj Hergé. He's director of the Oxford Institute for British Islam and an imam at the Oxford Islamic Congregation. A very good afternoon to you, Taj.
Good afternoon on this very hot day.
And indeed. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, I wanted to ask you about this announcement from the Immigration Minister for Denmark. This is Morten Bodskov. He's a member of the centre-left Social Democrats Party there. And this is the third attempt the government has had at this. He's announced plans to ban the Islamic calls for prayer 5 times a day from minarets, claiming parts of Denmark now feel like a suburb of Islamabad. He said a call to prayer should not be heard over Danish rooftops. It has no place in Denmark, and you shouldn't be in any doubt whether you've ended up in a suburb of Islamabad when you walk around Denmark. He says Islamization is creeping in Denmark and was taking up too much of the public space. What do you make of that move by the Danish government?
I mean, it's totally logical. I mean, there's nothing in Islam itself that says that you need to amplify the voice of the call to prayer. This is a modern development. Prior to the last century, there was no sound amplification, so the voice could only travel for about 100 meters, and that doesn't really create a huge kerfuffle. Yep. The point is that modern technology and with Islamist ideology and Muslim militancy, they wish to impose their version, their perversity of Islam on the bulk of the population. And so I fully endorse what the Danish immigration minister is doing, and I'll go a step further. We need to do something similar here. There's no need and no reason for anyone other than a Muslim to hear the call to prayer. That's number one.
I know you mentioned also the digital. You can have it on. You can have the call to prayer on your phone.
Absolutely. So this is really this is actually indication, Julia, of Muslims not effectively integrating in this country. If they were fully assimilated, fully integrated, they would be alert to the sensitivities and the sensibilities of the general public.
Okay, but hold on a minute.
They live in silos and ghettos, and they have no clue of what the general population is thinking.
Okay. A lot of people might say, well, hold on a minute, you can hear church bells. I mean, I have to say, you go and stay in a country hotel and it's a lovely little village, and then the church bells start ringing, God knows what hour on a Sunday morning. I think, if you want to go to church, if you're a Christian, fine, but do you have to wake me up as well? Is it any different, or is it the fact that it's 5 times a day and it's in a country that does not have a constitutional link with Christianity?
Yeah, you're quite right. I mean, firstly, the church bells is part of this society way before Islam arrived on these shores. So it's part of the indigenous culture and customs here. And if they want to do it on 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, I myself as a Muslim have no problem about it at all. The issue about the Muslim prayer, you rightly point out, is 5 times a day. And if they're going using sound amplification, the voice travels for 1, 2, 3 kilometers. Yeah. And this is nonsensical. Why must people 2 miles away from the mosque be disturbed 5 times a day?
Are you saying that this isn't something? Well, you've already said it's certainly not a requirement in Islam. Are you saying that this is being done deliberately as a sort of a militant, almost political act, rather than as an act of Islamic devotion?
It's partly that. I mean, clearly there is an element of Islamic ritualism here. But I mean, if these people were absolutely integrated in our society, they would be alert, cognizant of what the general public feels about this. I mean, for example, now in summer, the call to prayer is 4 a.m. Yeah. I mean, so why, if I'm a non-Muslim, why must I be woken up by this noise?
I mean, but is that happening here?
Yeah, in some places it does. For example, you go to Bradford, you go to Oldham, you go to Blackburn, and you and I live in rarefied districts. I live in Oxford. I don't know where you live. Okay, so we're not.
You're not hearing it, but it is happening. I mean, I have to say, I've been to in places like Egypt where you do hear it. I've got to be honest with you. I do find it quite a jarring sound, and I would find that difficult if it was in my local town.
Let me come back. If they do it in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, in Bangladesh, in wherever, that's fine. That's the majority religion there. I don't have an issue there. Here we come as Muslims are a minority. We know more than 4 or 5% maximum of the population. What right do we have to inflict and impose our value system on the 95% of the people?
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of people
I'm in favour
say.
of what the Danes are doing, and I hope, through God, we do the same here. In fact, I'm writing a letter to the Telegraph today.
Brilliant.
For us to start initiating something.
I look forward to reading it. They've not actually managed to see it before, but they did in 2018, along with a lot of other countries across Europe, France included, banned all face coverings, religious or otherwise, so including the burqa and the niqab from public places, particularly from universities and schools as well. And that I would absolutely bring in tomorrow. I have to say, I find myself utterly... I mean, I would say I feel revulsion when I see those items of clothing.
The burqa and the hijab, the face covering and the hair covering is not in the Quran. These are
even the hijab, even just the skirt scarf.
Okay, the word, very briefly, the word hijab is mentioned 8 times in the Quran. Not once does it refer to hair or to woman. So what does it refer to? It refers to a screen, a curtain, a barrier, a partition, a divider, secluder. So this idea that the hijab means covering a woman's hair is nonsensical. In fact, how this custom crept into Islam is through Judaism. It is a requirement of the Old Testament that Jewish women should cover their hair. Yeah. And when early Jewish converts attended Islam or became converts, they then brought that practice into Islam.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. I mean, again, there are some, some on the right have been calling for these things. And then people say that anyone who is asking for limitations is somehow racist. We've actually had a bit of a political spat the last couple of days over Bridget Phillipson. But she, in the past, and she has very recently called Nick Timothy, the Shadow Home Secretary, racist for saying that he disapproved of the Islamic prayer, mass Islamic prayer taking place in Trafalgar Square. Was he right to criticise that?
No, I don't think Muslims have a right to have a public gathering anywhere and everywhere. We really need to be cognizant of the feelings and emotions of the vast majority of the people here. Why must I go drag their nose, put their nose into the dirt? I think when Muslims are so supremacist-minded, so exclusionary-minded, that only creates more antipathy and more antagonism towards Muslims.
Do you think that the Islamic leaders who are pushing that sort of perhaps more sort of overt expressions of Islam into the public sphere, is that motivated by something other than just of sharing their faith?
I mean, they want on one level to proselytize, but I think they are also using political, have a political agenda. So some people are talking openly about the Islamic Republic of Britain. Now, I, for one, as a Muslim, the moment is this Islamic Republic of Britain, I am out of this country. I do not want to live under Sharia law. I do not want them to live under Muslim governance. Because what a mess have they done? Show me Saudi Arabia, Iran, Afghanistan, Egypt. Where is it successful? And why do Muslims in their millions want to come to the UK and then want to impose Sharia here?
Fantastic to talk to you, Dr. Taj Hage, Director of the Oxford Institute for British Islam. He's also Imam of the Oxford Islamic Congregation. Get that all out. Thank you so much. Philip Ingram, very brief response.
Yeah, well, the Taj bit about the hijab and the history. The Jewish faith was there, first of all. Christians